Zootopia. Follow along with this kids' film / noir crime thriller, full of bright colors, cute characters, allegories to contemporary racial and class politics.
You're not like them.
Oh, there's a them now.
Police discrimination.
You think I'm going to believe a fox?
Affirmative action.
Mammal Inclusion Initiative.
Tokenism.
Sir, I'm not just some token bunny.
Sexism.
So are all rabbits bad drivers, or is it just you?
And racial slurs.
A bunny can call another bunny cute, but when other animals do it, it's a little...
They will either teach your kid to be more tolerant, or turn them into a furry.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Rollin' 20s. We are the show that found out Brian Michael Bendis just turned 49 this week. Let's see what his relaunch looks like. I am Jeremy.
Steve. And Jesse.
Remember, you can subscribe to this show and several others in the MSP library at missionstarpodcast.com. You can like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, and on Tumblr. Follow us on Twitter at the Rolling 20s. You can send us any fan mail, suggestions for the show, or hate mail at mspfreight@yahoo.com. The music you heard at the beginning of the show is by Machine Supremacy. You can find more of their discography for free download at machinesupremacy.com, as well as their latest couple of albums on amazon.com. The clip you heard is by Honest Trailers. It's about the Disney movie Zootopia. You can find more of their videos on their YouTube channel under their channel of Screen Junkies. How's it going?
I miss sleeping in.
Yeah, usually you can solve that by keeping the eyes closed.
Yeah, I've been working, doing the morning shift, getting to work at 6 in the morning for the last 3 weeks now.
Okay. All right, just wait. In a few more months, that'll look like complete darkness.
I'm still up before the sun, so...
All right, fine. Steve, how are you doing?
Not too bad. I'm a little tired too, but that's my own fault.
All right. I've actually spent a little time on the tech demo for Titanfall 2.
Oh, really?
Oh, how's that?
Yeah, that's actually kind of groovy. It's been a while since I played the original one, and I've seen a lot of people in a Facebook group I was invited to complaining that it feels like Call of Duty. Maybe it's just the time I've spent not playing Titanfall, but it's kind of refreshing to play a game that's not just this quick, but there are so many different angles of attack, and then the Titans add a whole new dimension to it when you're trying to control points or destroy enemies and everything. The new powers are pretty nifty, too. You know, the fact that Titans can do this Kamehameha-style blast, or at least a few of them can. Others lay down this river of napalm just headed straight at something. It's pretty awesome, in my opinion. It's much more fluid than I remember the original game. And that's not counting the 2 nights ago I was out at RiffTrax Live taping of Mothra.
Nice.
That was eye-opening. It has been a long time since I've watched that movie. I haven't realized how bad it is. There's a lot of strange gaps in there, and the translation is even worse. The main villain is this guy who's supposed to be from this fictional country. His name is Dr. Nelson.
Really?
Hey.
Yeah. And he's probably one of your far-flung cousins, Jesse. But let me put it this way. The voice they attach to him in the dubbing, half the time it sounds like he wants to suck your blood. You know, all that crap.
Oh, wow.
It's really god-awful. And he always has this expression on his face, like he smelled a fart, but he didn't know who did it. It's really bad. Everything else going okay?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, I'm trying to gear up for this project I got coming for Kamikaze, and actually, I should let you guys know, somebody that we all know passed away last week. Or last weekend, actually. Up until this year, we've been volunteering at Anime Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. William
Johnson, the guy who runs the video game department, a.k.a. Whiskey, passed away.
Oh, no.
No.
Yeah. I don't know if it's coincidence or not. I mean, part of it's got to be just estate planning, but his memorial service actually falls on the same weekend as Long Beach Comic-Con, so I'm trying to figure out how to spread out my time. My wife is coming down because she loved whiskey. You know, I'm trying to figure it all out. So his memorial is September 17th. Not the funeral, just a memorial. Everybody's getting together at the local sci-fi club and just going to share some feelings.
Oh, damn.
Damn.
Yeah, it's creepy, isn't it? So, a little bit of good, a little bit of bad this week. What can I say? The subject of the week is Doctor Strange Volume 1 from the comic book relaunch from 2015. We'll get into that after we get through our news of the week. And first up is Marvel Media News. We talk about the Marvel properties that are not ending up on the comic book pages, but are ending up on movie screens and TV screens and internet broadcasts and the occasional podcast. And, sometimes just people walk by and say, hey, have you heard? The first bit of news actually has to do with Captain America Civil War. Obviously, the Blu-ray release is coming soon. It has been a good 3 months already since the movie's come out, so I imagine the DVD release will probably be closer to the end of next month. They actually... I should say that the Russo brothers actually talked a little bit about 2 Avengers that were missing in the initial scene in the film. Remember when the Scarlet Witch, Captain America, the Falcon, and the Black Widow were in Lagos, I believe it was, in the initial action scene of the film? Some people noticed that the Vision and War Machine were curiously missing. According to Joe Russo, who had an interview recently, quote, "We wanted to show that the Avengers were functioning like a military unit now, that they would take a specialist into each location depending on what was required. They're beginning the mission undercover, and it's easy for Wanda and Natasha to be undercover. They have the eyes in the air in Falcon and Cap, so we wanted to kind of create this idea that they're dealing with hotspot issues all over the world. And Vision and War Machine can be dealing with one problem while they're off in Lagos dealing with another problem. So they divide and conquer using their resources on a mission-dependent basis," unquote. What do you think of that particular explanation?
I think it makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
I always thought about it more conventionally because I saw the characters that could fit into spaces like Captain America. I saw, the Falcon who was in the sky and rather... one of those things is kind of hard to see unless you look straight up. And then I always tried to picture, gosh, what would it look like if Vision and War Machine were on that mission? Well, I guess it wouldn't look very natural if they were sipping tea, would it? It just didn't seem to fit in at the time.
I don't know. He could have been wearing one of his Argyle sweaters.
I just always thought, okay, these are the sore thumb guys. Can't take them here, Because War Machine... He could have been high up in the sky, but he couldn't have been as low as the Falcon, who doesn't have near as much engine noise. He does tend to sound like a runaway missile when he's flying around. Joss Whedon also decided to explain one of his favorite Avengers scenes, the post-credit scene in the shawarma shop. Do you know it was actually a parallel to another series he worked on way back when?
Which one?
Angel, actually.
Okay.
Joss Whedon recently explained at San Diego Comic-Con, of all places, he said that the scene was reminiscent of the 15th episode of Angel Season 5. That was the episode where Fred, played by Amy Acker, died in the show. I don't know how familiar you are with it overall.
Nope. None whatsoever.
Okay.
I remember Fred, so...
Yeah. Well, the impetus of the scene, according to Whedon at Comic-Con, quote, "The scene itself was really exciting. I love Alexis Denisoff and Amy Acker. They were just acting their hearts out. At the end of that whole day was just them in her bedroom, and she's getting sicker and sicker and finally dying in his arms. And then after that emotionally draining scene, it's the 3 of them that went out for drinks and ended up just sitting around quietly, exhausted by the day's events. And that's how I came up with the Avengers tag," unquote. So everybody being emotionally drained after filming an episode of Angel was how he came up with the shawarma scene where they're just sitting around slightly uncomfortable chewing on things and not talking. Almost makes sense, man. He's drawing from a lot of real-life stuff.
Yeah.
Also very vocal lately is James Gunn, the man who could kill me on frickin' Twitter. Him and his will I, won't I do Comic-Con crap that we suffered through for, 4 months before he said yes? God, I love the man, but I hate him at the same time. And this little reveal doesn't make it any easier. We know who the cast of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 are as far as the main team. Apparently the additions of Nebula, Mantis, and Yondu as part of the team going into this movie. According to a recent Q&A he had on Facebook, there was another Guardian at one point in the script.
Which one?
he won't say. He removes this new member, according to him, saying that the film would have been overcrowded. The choice was between Mantis and the other character, and to him it was obvious which one was chosen to stay. Quote, "Yes, in my initial treatment, I had a whole other Guardian involved. I loved the character and loved including him/her, and thought that my take was fun, but I started to feel that there were too many characters in the story, and for all the characters to get their due, I needed to remove one. So this character left, and Mantis stayed," unquote. You hear that, Zack Snyder? That's how this frickin' works.
They only have nearly half of what the Guardians has.
I understand that, man. It's just, at the same time, Snyder tries to shove so many characters and moments into the movies, like an uncredited Jimmy Olsen and what's her name that everyone thought was Barbara Gordon, but it didn't turn out to be anything but a sub character that wasn't even important to the story.
And Doomsday.
Yeah. You know, at least Gunn knew when to take something out for the sake of story instead of just, leave it in there, we'll figure it out. Supposedly a cast list has recently been leaked for Spider-Man Homecoming, showing who a lot of characters and actors are going to be in the film. This was tweeted by an apparent paparazzi. I don't know how they would have gotten the cast list. But according to this, and, again, it's a leak, so grain of salt in all things, Bokeem Woodbine has been cast in the film as the Shocker.
Okay.
I don't know why you take old Quilt Face into a movie. Doesn't seem like one you want to spend a lot of time on. Steve knows the Shocker pretty well.
I know, too.
The man with that yellow and purple, sometimes crimson suit with the special bracers that create shockwaves, and this quilted suit's supposed to protect him. But he looks like a walking duvet cover, really.
I always get him and Electro confused because their names are so similar. Not that their costumes are anything alike, but...
Well, there was a couple of eye-openers here. An actress named Salinas Leiva is supposed to play Miss Warren. There is not a Miss Warren in Spider-Man's orbit. However, there has been a Mr. Warren in Spider-Man's orbit, a former professor of his named Miles Warren, who turned into another character called the Jackal.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. Kenneth Choi, who was in Captain America the First Avenger as Specialist Morita, the Japanese soldier in the film.
Uh-huh.
He's been cast in Spider-Man Homecoming as Principal Morita.
They're taking a playbook out of Ultimate Spider-Man.
Well, it has people guessing either Principal Morita is a life model decoy, or he's some far-flung descendant of the original character. And the other thing that's supposedly been revealed this week is that Zendaya. We've talked about her being attached to this film for a while, the former Disney Channel star. She's been cast in an unknown character, however, the name Michelle has been attached to her. Well, according to some reports, Michelle may be a placeholder for another name, one Mary Jane Watson.
Okay.
Which is not a terribly big deal to me, but it has certain segments of the internet in an uproar because Zendaya is a notably African woman.
Oh, no.
Guess where the problem is?
She isn't a redhead.
Very good, and I'm glad to see you're keeping up on pop culture for once. That's good. It's the usual crap across the internet. Goodness knows, all I want is talented actors and actresses to play this. Race and even gender are rather immaterial to me as long as the movie's entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to move down from movies into TV for a minute because there is a very big announcement this week that has me very excited. A series by Brian K. Vaughan and Adrian Alphona was greenlit for TV, but it wasn't greenlit for television. Let me explain. According to Marvel's head of TV, Jeff Loeb, we've talked about him. He's running Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Netflix series.
Yeah.
He announced this week that Hulu is getting its own series of The Runaways.
Huh.
How familiar are you with The Runaways?
Just that one character that's in the female team?
Is that like a spin-off of X-Men or something? Or am I thinking of something else?
No, you're thinking of something completely different. The Runaways is a very different story about 6 kids, ranging from teenage to preteen, who find that they live in Los Angeles. Their families have been friends for a very long while, and half of them are friends, half of them are just kind of thrown together. But what they find out in the course of one night is that their parents are all supervillains.
Right, okay, now I remember.
And they cannot take this revelation, so they run away. Nico Minoru, a.k.a. Sister Grimm, yes, she's on A-Force, but this is where she started. She's the daughter of the Sorcerer arm of the supervillains. This has also birthed other characters like Molly Hayes, also known as an X-Man in the future anyway.
Yeah.
There's a number of other characters. However, Chase always sticks out to me. He's the... I want to say he's the son of two technically proficient individuals. So, it's one of my favorite series. When it first came out, it was a very engaging read, although it was one of those series where time was not very good to it. I almost wish it was a limited run series. But the fact that it's coming to Hulu means that it doesn't have to follow the usual rules of network TV. I'm looking forward to this and how it turns out. We're going to step back into movies because Deadpool 2 may be looking at an Oscar winner to play Cable.
Who?
According to Heroic Hollywood, Kyle Chandler is Fox's current first choice to play Cable. Kyle Chandler was in Friday Night Lights, but Fox even wants to bring in a bigger name than that. Specifically, they would like the star of the Taken films, Liam Neeson, to play Cable. Now,
wow.
Having Liam Neeson play Cable sounds like a pun in and of itself, and if you want to understand that joke, you need to listen to more Hollywood Babylon. I can't really see Liam Neeson in that role myself.
I kind of can, I kind of can't. I don't know, it's just...
Yeah, Steve, what's your opinion on that idea?
I mean, visually, I don't think he quite fits, but especially all his Taken characters, I think, pretty much represent Cable's personality to a degree.
Maybe, but the Taken characters always seem to be slicker than Cable. Cable is... He's a smart man, but he's more of a stand in one place and mow them down type of guy.
Yeah, I mean, he did run his own, X-Force and whatnot. It didn't go well all the time, but...
Well, he started
have
it,
that.
and it only took about 25 issues before they rebelled against him, I think. It's a complicated damn thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, doing Cable, acting Cable would not be beyond his range, but
and
I just don't think he looks like Cable to me.
Yeah, and mind you, this is just a studio's idea. That doesn't mean they proposed it to him or that he's accepted even. Speaking of movies that need a second look, the Fantastic Four film, the Josh Trank reboot from 2015.
Mm-hmm.
There is word coming out by the writer of the script as to what the original script looked like. The original scriptwriter was Jeremy Slater. He was the first screenwriter hired on the film, and according to him, the only thing that survived the 10 to 15 drafts of his screenplay was one line of Reed Richards saying, "Don't blow up."
Wow.
Slater did say that the overall outline remains the same, but what changed over time was the structure and the tone. According to Slater, both Slater's screenplay and the finished film have young characters going to the Baxter Foundation, but in the finished film, it's never really explained what the foundation is. If it's a school, why are there no classes or teachers? Why do most of the students seem to be in their late 20s? According to Slater's screenplay, the Baxter Foundation was envisioned as a, quote, sort of Hogwarts for nerds. A school filled with young geniuses zipping around on prototype hoverboards and experimenting with anti-gravity and teleportation and artificial life forms, unquote. Also, the original script had the young Reed Richards befriending a damaged young Latverian scientist named Taylor Swift. I'm just trying to see if you're paying attention. Who slowly seduces Reed into bending the rules and damaging his friendship with Ben Grimm, the future Thing. Slater also said that they would go to the negative zone in his version instead of the Planet Zero that the final film had, where they would, quote, have fought Annihilus, described by Slater as a pissed-off cybernetic T-Rex. Annihilus appears to kill Victor, and the rest get zapped with radiation on their return home, giving them their powers. Later, Victor returns from the negative zone, having killed Annihilus and reshaped his control rod into a sort of living body armor, unquote. Opinions?
I never saw the reboot, but yeah,
I know,
that doesn't sound as bad as... It sounds more like a comic book than whatever the hell they made that movie.
Well, further on in the story on Collider, it says that Slater says he liked the stuff with lots of humor, lots of heart, and lots of spectacle, while Trank preferred something grounded, gritty, and as realistic as possible. And, while these events basically take up the entirety of Trank's movie with a rushed third-act climax, Slater's draft had a lot more material that was more faithful to the comics. Quote, in addition to Annihilus in the negative zone, we had Dr. Doom declaring war against the civilized world, the Mole Man unleashing a 60-foot genetically engineered monster in downtown Manhattan, a commando raid on the Baxter Foundation, a Saving Private Ryan-style finale pitting our heroes against an army of Doombots in war-torn Latveria, and a post-credit teaser featuring Galactus and the Silver Surfer destroying an entire planet. We had monsters and aliens and fantastic cars and a cute spherical Herbie robot that was basically BB-8 2 years before BB-8 ever existed. And if you think all that sounds great, well, yeah, we did too. Problem was, it also would have been massively, massively expensive, unquote.
True.
You know, it's one of those cases where, yes, it would have been expensive, and early estimates for what his draft would have required would have been $300 million. However, the description of what they're giving... it would have been worth it.
Probably. Would have been a decent depiction of Doom.
Yeah, this sounds like the kind of movie
I don't think they needed Mole Man, but...
Not necessarily, but the basic description of what he wanted in this film and the way it was structured, this sounds like the kind of movie that would have made $400 million just in the U.S. This sounds like it would have been a fun romp.
Yep.
Hugh Jackman is finally done. He tweeted out this week that the Wolverine 3 wraps up filming in New Mexico. They spent the summer primarily shooting in New Mexico. Supporting producer Simon Kinberg previously claimed that this R-rated film will have an Old West flavor.
Yeah, I remember joking about Draw.
You're right.
I've seen plenty of Westerns. Good, bad, and everything in between. They don't necessarily need to be rated R.
I don't know what story this is. There's a lot of speculation that this is the Old Man Logan storyline. This is where X-23 comes in. This is where Logan gets to go out and Laura Kinney comes in. I'm trying to understand if Fox is actually building a narrative or if they're giving up on X-Men films and this is their exit. I would really like to know what they plan here.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I just know that, it can be a lot more bloody and violent since it's going to be rated R right off the get-go.
I understand that. I'm just asking the question because Old Man Logan, considering the way the character ages in the movies they've presented so far, this would have to be so far in the future that for Laura Kinney to be in future films, they would have to warp her back in time somehow. Which I guess means you need Shadowcat to dig her fingers into her head again. I don't know.
Well, considering that, Old Man Logan is from the future, they could have just warped him back.
Possibly, but that would kind of take away from the Western theme.
Time travel, stop it.
This is where the X-Men live.
Yeah, I'm almost positive that's what they're going to do, is, Old Man Logan comes back. He may have been playing Old Man Logan and the current Wolverine.
Don't, Steve. Stop.
I'm pretty close to done with Fox and their X-Men films. I've given them a lot of leeway, but they can't seem to get it right since the second film, frankly. There was a recent fan vote online for Hasbro when it comes to Marvel's Legends line. The Marvel Legends are the, near 4-inch action figures? No, they're closer to 5-inch, aren't they? 6-inch, sorry. Marvel Legends are 6-inch action figures. And there was a choice as to what the next hero the fan vote would allow to be the new Marvel Legends figure. Previous winners have been Captain Marvel, Gamora, and Angela. The 2016 winner is former Avenger and former Thunderbolt Songbird.
Songbird?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
She beat out other members of the vote that included Typhoid Mary, Citizen 5, and White Rabbit. Songbird is the former Masters of Evil member Screaming Mimi rebranded. She has a special harness that, when she screams through it, I should say, creates sound constructs, usually in this pinkish or purplish light. And last up, when it comes to Marvel Media news, to celebrate Captain America's 75th anniversary, Marvel Comics teamed up with Harley Davidson and their dealers in Australia and New Zealand to create 25 custom motorcycles inspired by various heroes and villains in Marvel. Want to see what that looks like?
Sure. Yeah.
There's some interesting stuff in here. I sent you guys the link to the story via IO9. The very first bike, that Black Panther Pride, a little bit dull. Wouldn't be my first pick. The Black Widow via the Iron 883 called the Solitary, that's not bad. Don't quite get the Thor one.
Yeah.
Actually, the first bike I like in this list would be a couple down. The Wasp-inspired Roadster called the Fun Loving. That's a nice one. That has some flavor to it. And the next bike underneath, it's an Iron Man V-Rod muscle called the Boldness. I really like that. I've always been more of a fan of, what do you call it? Hogs and street bikes rather than choppers. The one inspired by Drax, Persuasive. That's not what I'd call that. That is a loud bike.
I'm liking the one inspired by Punisher for some reason.
Which one?
The Justice.
It's
got some fat tires.
Yeah, it's a little plain for me. The one inspired by Captain America, the Freedom, the Street Glide Special, that reminds me of the bike he rode in like the 70s.
I think that's the idea.
Those bad movies. See, now the second Black Panther bike, the Ferocious, that's a nice one to me. That thing looks like it eats concrete. I don't quite get the Spider-Gwen bike. The alternative?
I like their second Ant-Man better than the first.
So do I. The No Nonsense is a much better one. I also think the second Iron Man is much better than the first. The Courage.
Yeah, it stands out. Grabs your attention.
Yeah, that thing is awesome. The Thanos-inspired one, the Voracious. I don't quite see Thanos in it.
No.
Yeah, and the same thing for Ultron's intelligence. I'm like that.
The second Ultron one, the Rogue, is much more inspired. It's beneath the second Black Widow bike.
The second Black Widow
that
bike,
one's better.
Looks better than the first two. Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah.
No, they did something with the headlight.
Yeah, take a look at the Ghost Rider one a couple more down, the Transformative. That's as close as you can get without setting it on fire.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And the second Groot one, the Big Hearted, is pretty good as well.
Yeah.
Some nice design choices there. Motorcycles are not my thing, but I do appreciate looking at them. Now we'll get into DC media news. We'll talk about the other major property and their multimedia projects upcoming in the next few months and years. Henry Cavill has decided to tease on Instagram a photo of his new costume for the Justice League, which seems to imply a significant event in the comics is taking place soon. It's a really textured photo, and according to what people are looking at, it looks like a close-up of the S symbol on his new costume, which seems to have Kryptonian scrawl all throughout it. And people are taking this black and white photo, or monochrome photo, I should say, to assume that the costume he'll wear in the Justice League will have to do with the Death of Superman storyline. He was eventually rebirthed in a black and silver costume. I would say that's a good guess by people who are speculating. However, slow down just a little bit, because I can't guarantee this isn't just a black and white photo.
Yeah. I mean, considering that all the rest of the background and everything else is black and white too?
Yeah. It could fully be a black Superman costume. It hasn't been unheard of. I think he's had 2 or 3 of them, frankly.
Yeah.
It's just a case of we really need to know what filter he was using on Instagram before we can get excited. According to James Wan, the guy who's directing the Aquaman movie for DC and Warner Brothers, he has an interesting idea as to where the Aquaman stands in the Justice League.
Okay.
According to him, he thinks that Aquaman is the Justice League's Wolverine. Let me read the quote. Quote, "Yeah, I actually think it's a brilliant move on Zack and company to cast someone like Jason. Immediately, the whole joke aspect of Aquaman goes out the window. You have such a muscular superhero-y character, and one that's almost, to me, in some ways, I look at him, he's kind of the Wolverine in some respect. He's the outsider who gets pulled into this world, and he kind of doesn't want to belong, and he was doing his own thing, and he's prided freedom above everything else. That kind of plays nicely into who his character is. He's like a reluctant superhero, right? He's the reluctant king, basically, or would-be king," unquote.
Okay, I understand the context now. That makes a lot more sense.
I understand the context, I just not quite seeing it, that's all.
No, I don't see it either.
You know, I could be completely wrong. Maybe this adaptation will be like the thing that pulls people who aren't comic book readers into actually reading Aquaman. However, there's also kind of something to be brought up about the disparity between what they're presenting versus what Aquaman still is in the comic books.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope it's a good movie. Although at this point, I just kind of hope we get that far. Did you guys read how far down Suicide Squad did in its second weekend?
Dropped pretty low, didn't it?
67% drop from weekend to weekend.
Is that as bad as Batman vs. Superman?
Almost. I think Batman v
Damn.
Superman did 69% in a drop, which it's good and bad on different scales, because yes, it didn't drop as bad as Batman v Superman did, but it also didn't make as much money in its opening weekend. So it's kind of a mas o menos situation. It looks like the movie's going to finish with about $400 million domestically. I'm still not sure what the international take is yet.
Well,
So
it did
China's
get
not available.
banned in China, so...
Yes, yeah, there's a couple of mitigating factors there that I just don't know enough about international markets to even guess about. There may be a ray of hope coming in Warner Brothers DC films, though.
What's that?
Well, there's a movie in the slate upcoming, Shazam, the retelling of Billy Bastion, formerly known as Captain Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the young boy who speaks the magic word and becomes a full-blown adult with powers very similar to Superman, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's been some questions whether or not the Shazam film will be set in the cinematic universe or if it'll be a standalone film. According to the person producing the film, Danny Garcia, it is set in the DC cinematic universe, but it has an entirely different team working on it behind the scenes. Quote, "Shazam is to live in the same world as the other films, but we have an incredible autonomy over this brand and franchise. We're working with a different team, different producers, directors. It's a different setup. We don't feel fettered by or constrained by the successes or failures and challenges of the other projects. That was a key component to our participation, that we were able to control the tone and the voice and do it the way we want to. It needs to be of the world," unquote.
I have some hopes for this film.
Yeah. You don't understand. It says further on in the story in Newsarama that while Zack Snyder is setting the pace for the DC cinematic universe, he has no fingers in this film.
Oh, thank God.
Zack Snyder is not involved in the Shazam film at all, at least at current. The only other thing I can say is that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is still attached to be Black Adam in the film, and he also has a co-producing credit in this one. So that means no Vin Diesel. There's a new report about the CW's Flash show. 2 new characters have been cast in the show. According to E! Online, Ashley Rickards of MTV's Awkward has been cast as The Top.
Really?
Yes. The Top is probably one of the weirdest and potentially most worthless characters in comics.
As opposed to the bottom?
That's your role in the show. But No, the Top is just as it sounds. His power is to spin in place really fast, like Whirlwind, except unlike Whirlwind, he doesn't even have the cutting blades on his wrist. He just spins really fast. How this guy makes it into the renown of the Flash's rogues is unknown to me. And also notable is that Ashley Rickards is not a man. The Top in DC Comics has always been a male character. In the TV show, it's going to be a woman.
Okay.
In addition to that, another character's been cast, Magenta. And this one I had to look up. I was not aware of this particular Flash villain. Magenta is a villain with magnetic powers and a split personality.
So kind of like Polaris.
Sort of, except Magenta dresses, at least in the comic books, in a traditionally silver and magenta costume. I get the feeling Magenta is kind of a direct poke at Magneto at certain points. Magenta has been cast by Joey King of Fargo. They've described Magenta for the TV show as the Clyde to the Mirror Masters, or as the Bonnie to Mirror Masters Clyde.
Really?
So, yes, the Mirror Master will show up in the next season. That's the last of the well-renowned Flash rogues that needed to be cast, and he's on his way. Will Travel, as you recall, he was on Jessica Jones as the crazy cybernetic soldier Nuke.
Oh, yeah.
He's been cast as Christopher Chance in Arrow for the CW. Christopher Chance is actually a DC hero known as the Human Target. I kid you not. That is the name of the hero. I don't know if that's an official call sign, but that's always been the name of the comic book this character's been in. The Human Target's actually been remade for TV twice previously. It was a Rick Springfield-led ABC series in the 1990s. Gee, I wonder why that didn't win any awards. There was a 2010 Fox remake with Mark Valley. That lasted for 2 seasons as well. So this wouldn't be the first time this character's been portrayed in multimedia. I imagine this character will be in the new season of Arrow that's scheduled to begin October 5th on the CW. And Kevin Smith, he's going to be a very busy man very soon. Because, as you recall, he was asked to come back to direct more episodes of The Flash for the upcoming season.
Sweet.
He would like to add onomatopoeia in some episodes of The Arrow. And it turns out he's also been tapped to direct an episode of Supergirl for the CW.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, he's going to direct the episode titled Supergirl Lives. And as it turns out, that hits home in a very special place for Kevin Smith. Do you know why?
Enlighten us.
Okay. He said, quote, executive producer Andrew Kreisberg told me the name of the episode is Supergirl Lives. I'm going to cry talking about this. The name of the script I wrote back in 1996 was called Superman Lives. Unquote.
Huh.
Remember, when they were talking about rebooting Superman in the 90s, Warner Brothers asked Kevin Smith to turn in a script, and he did. He titled the movie Superman Lives. So, it seems like as much as the CW asked him to do stuff, the writers and producers out there leave a lot of Easter eggs for him to play with, like when they cast Jason Mewes as a random character in The Flash. He went on to say, quote, I might get to play with Superman. They've added Superman this year. Do you know how fucking mind-bending this is for me? I was never going to direct that Superman movie, but I did write it back in the day. To be able to work on a show where it's like, go direct Superman. Like, come on, man. Unquote. There's going to be a lot of weed and crying on that set.
He's a nerd living out a dream.
He is. He's truly living the dream. The NBC show, Powerless, the one set in the DC universe with a fictional insurance company dealing with superhuman problems.
Yeah.
The pilot was screened at Comic-Con International. The reviews that came out of that room were not positive, unfortunately. And things are apparently getting a little more dicey for the show. The show has not officially begun production yet. There's only the pilot, but it's already looking for a showrunner. The creator of the show, Ben Queen, who is running the show, exited the whole thing, quoting creative differences with NBC.
Ooh.
Powerless is scheduled to begin production in late August. Filming has been delayed due to Queen's exit. The delay supposedly will not affect Powerless's premiere date, as its mid-season debut has not been set as of yet. Not good signs all the way around.
Yeah.
No.
And last up in DC media news, it is amazing what some people can do when they repurpose products. I don't know if you guys have seen the Wonder Woman action figure that came out as a result of Batman v Superman.
No.
It's a 19th-inch action figure. It's by Jakks Pacific. It is not terribly impressive. Would you like to see what that looks like?
I guess.
Was that the one with the really horrible-looking face?
I don't know. A lot of action figures have really horrible-looking faces. And I speak as a guy who likes them. As you can see, this is not a terribly fun action figure. It's lacking elbow joints. It appears to be lacking knee joints. It's really meant to just kind of stand there and maybe hold something in those hook hands it has. It's really kind of god-awful.
Who made this?
Jakks Pacific. The same guys who make, like, the World Wrestling Federation figures.
Okay.
Now, enter artist Noel Cruz, who decided to take one of these and repurpose it. You will not believe the unbelievable work that Noel Cruz put into this, because if you're not careful on first glimpse of this, you might swear you're looking at Gal Gadot. Check out the redo.
Wow.
Damn.
That is an amazing transformation, isn't it?
And the lack of elbow and knee joints kind of play into it.
Oh, a little bit. But, I mean, here's an up-close as to the work he did on the head. I imagine he added some hair somehow to this thing to make it look that lifelike, but it is awesome work.
That's some good paint work.
Absolutely, man. This thing actually looks worth the $20 all of a sudden. Granted, he probably put about $250 worth of work into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it almost turned into like a collector's, item worth more than $20. But
Did he put in the leather straps? Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he did all the work on it, and it actually sold on eBay as of this August 17th. The final winning bid, $1,700.
wow.
Third party guys, get on it.
Yeah, I'd say he made his money back. Now, if only he can make the Superman figure look less pretentious.
We don't really want to ask miracles of him, do we?
Wow, you're in evil moods today.
That's what happens when I just wake up.
Okay.
Cranky.
Okay, we will get into general media news. This is where we talk about multimedia properties that are not Marvel or DC related. We do have to start with something relatively sad. Another piece of our childhood has died. I'm not talking about reboots and remakes. I'm talking about Kenny Baker. Kenny Baker was the original midget who was put in the R2-D2 suit for the original trilogy of Star Wars.
Oh, really?
Yes, he was 81. He passed away after battling a long illness. He was the one who played R2-D2 starting way back in 1977 for Star Wars A New Hope. Baker was on the set for The Force Awakens, but only as a consultant. He was not in the suit that time around. Baker's also known for appearances in 80s films such as Time Bandits and Flash Gordon, even.
Huh.
His niece, Abigail Shield, said, quote, "It was expected, but it was sad nonetheless. He had a very long and fulfilled life. He brought lots of happiness to people, and we'll be celebrating the fact that he was well-loved throughout the world. We're all very proud of what he achieved in this lifetime," unquote. I mean, it's almost amazing he had to keep working past, like, the 90s, man. The royalties alone probably kept him in good money for just years.
Yeah. It's what happens when, you're doing something you like for work.
Yeah, I didn't see specifically what he passed away from, but, the stature of an individual can cause all kinds of health problems when you... It sounds cruel to say, but when you grow up in the kind of way that he had to.
Right.
There's a new trailer for Rogue One that's been shared across the internet. And I say shared across the internet because we saw the trailer, last week, I believe?
Mm.
The new trailer, everybody's freaking out over Darth Vader at the end.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There was another trailer that was released outside the U.S. The international trailer came out, and it actually has other footage in it.
Really?
Yeah, you want to see what other footage means?
Okay.
Sure.
All right. I sent the video.
Okay, starting out the same.
Yep, narcoleptic piano.
Imperial flags reign across the galaxy.
This really seems like it's going to be more of a thriller than past Star Wars films.
We have intercepted a coded Imperial transmission. It indicates that a major weapons test is imminent.
The message was sent by your father.
That's a different
We
twist.
need to know what it is.
Hmm.
And how
That explains why she's so adamant on the mission.
Who's her father then?
Yep. Mads Mikkelsen played it.
If you're really doing this, I want to help.
There's the U-Wing again.
Good. I've been recruiting for the rebellion for a long time.
We destroyed our home. We fight the Empire now.
Better look at the various characters.
Mm-hmm.
Gives you more character to them.
Mm-hmm.
What will you do?
A lot more desperation added in the B-roll scenes too.
What will you do if they break you?
This film actually seems to make it pretty clear that the rebellion is on a back foot posture.
What will you become?
That TIE fighter
Are you
scene was
with
nifty.
me?
All the way.
May the Force be with us.
You know, actually, if I had to add a parallel, I would say that this trailer makes the movie feel like a sci-fi version of the Magnificent Seven.
Hmm.
These people know they're on a mission that's very likely to kill them, but they're doing it anyway. What are your opinions so far? Because this is the first Star Wars trailer I've seen in a long time that makes me want to watch a Star Wars film.
I was already interested, so yeah.
Yeah, I was interested. This one is really just up the stakes for me. It's like,
yeah,
normally you see a TIE fighter, TIE fighters are a joke, but when you're just a human being versus a TIE fighter, that's kind of scary.
It seems like they're painting a very different picture here. You know, the current trilogy that's coming out now and the first one were very much westerns in space. The prequel trilogy, they tried Shakespearean tragedy and somehow ended up on Jerry Springer levels. But this one, it feels like a spy film. You know, I'm looking forward to it. It's a very different feel from everything else I've seen so far.
Oh, I was going to say, I have to say, I like the international trailer more than the one that they released here.
Absolutely, man.
It was a better put-together trailer. Yep.
Probably by the same company. They just, for some reason, they greenlit more footage outside the U.S. than in it. I don't know. One of the advantages I have living in Southern California, one of the things you guys are probably willing to kill me for, this winter, there's going to be a pop-up Mos Eisley Cantina in Hollywood.
Huh.
Interesting.
It's a Star Wars themed Mos Eisley Cantina, like the very first film that Luke Skywalker and Ben Kenobi wandered into and met Han Solo. They're calling it the Scum and Villainy Cantina, coming to Hollywood. The exact dates, the exact date and location have not been revealed yet, but you can follow the developments of it at scumandvillainy.com to find out when reservations are being set. It's only going to be open for a few hours every evening, 6 to 8 p.m. or 8:30 to 10:30 p.m. Saturdays will also have an afternoon seating of 3 to 5 p.m. You can have walk-ins from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. No, I ain't doing that. It's one of those things where I'd like to find out more just to find out, what the menu is and how much this might cost. This might be a very groovy evening, a good way to spend an afternoon with a few people.
Yeah, it sounds fun.
Man, we talked a couple weeks ago about how The Lost Boys is getting new life as a comic book in DC, right?
Right.
Turns out that the showrunner of iZombie and Veronica Mars, Rob Thomas, he's also bringing The Lost Boys to a TV reboot on the CW. According to Deadline, this is envisioned as a 7-season anthology-style run. It's going to be set in a new decade, beginning with the Summer of Love in 1960 San Francisco, and the cast will change from season to season to make the change in time and locale. The only constant will be the Lost Boys themselves.
Huh.
That, I gotta hand it to him. That actually sounds like an interesting idea. Seeing how young vampires try and hide and survive from decade to decade, that's kind of a cool idea.
I
don't know, do you guys have any further opinions on that?
I'm not a big fan of vampires, so meh.
I'm a fan of the original movie. It's some good 80s pulp.
Yeah. I don't know. I may actually end up giving this a shot.
Okay. Thank goodness we're not dealing with the big money betting in Counter-Strike Global Offensive, because one of the biggest Counter-Strike betting sites has dropped betting.
Oh?
If you recall, Valve sent a cease and desist letter to the owners of CSGO Lounge, which held out as long as they could. They even tried to get an official gambling license. Apparently, that was a no-go. So CSGO Lounge announced in an update post this past week, quote, "Today we are announcing that we're closing our virtual items betting functionality with immediate effect. Depositing virtual skins and items in order to place a bet is not possible anymore. At the moment, we are working on a solution for items withdrawal. Please stay tuned for an update on this topic. Lounge will continue as an esports entertainment and information platform with new features to be released very soon," unquote. We talked a few weeks ago about skin betting in Counter-Strike Global Offensive and how that is that can be a big money industry for the hosting websites.
Mm-hmm.
There was also a couple of creators, if you recall, who were reviewing certain CSGO betting sites, and it turns out they were running them.
Yeah.
So, I don't quite know what this will do to the community. I doubt that you'll stop all betting on skins. It's just one of the biggest betting sites is no longer taking them. Now they'll just be an esports entertainment site, as they put it.
Mm-hmm.
This one threw me off when I read this during the week, and I knew it was something we had to discuss a little bit. I ask you to hold your comments and your vitriol for a couple minutes.
Okay.
Do you know who Thomas Radecki is?
No.
No.
Thomas Radecki rose to prominence in 1985. He is the man who openly called for censorship of RPGs like Dungeons & Dragons for allegedly causing player death. And no, I don't mean when you rolled a 1. I mean, this is one of those guys that news outlets and people went to as an expert, claiming that Dungeons & Dragons cause people to kill themselves and potentially Satan worship.
Well, I'm experiencing homicidal thoughts right now.
Well, unfortunately, unless you're very well connected, you can't do anything about that. Radecki was sentenced to 11 to 22 years in prison after a court trial.
Ah.
Would you like to know what he was convicted of?
Lying?
Illegally administering controlled substances as a doctor and running a corrupt organization.
Excellent character witness.
The man, Radecki, said in 1985, quote, "The evidence in these cases is really quite impressive. There's no doubt in my mind that the game Dungeons & Dragons is causing young men to kill themselves and others. The game is one of non-stop combat and violence. Although I'm sure that people at TSR mean no harm, that is exactly what their games are causing. Based on player interviews and game materials, it's clear to me that this game is desensitizing players to violence and causing an increased tendency to violent behavior," unquote. He really kind of shoved all that into one sentence that kind of ran over itself. Radecki was accused of over-prescribing anti-addiction and anti-anxiety drugs and trading them for sex with female patients, including one who eventually, allegedly, bore a child of his. At one point, Radecki had over 1,000 patients.
Jeez.
So, well, he'll have the ability to reread the books while he's in prison. Maybe he'll come to a different conclusion. A man can hope. Do you guys remember we've talked a couple times about potentially disastrous comic book films, and one that never saw the light of day? That's Roger Corman's Fantastic Four film from, I want to say, 1992? I don't know if you recall this. It starred a few...
Yeah, a little bit.
Semi-notable actors, and the only reason that this movie was even produced at the time was the same reason why Fox continuously works on X-Men projects, because they wanted to keep the rights. Well, there is a new documentary coming out about this film called Doomed, The Untold Story of Roger Corman's Fantastic Four. This documentary is actually coming out on VOD and on October 11th and DVD on December 20th. We can actually watch the story of at least the making of what may be one of the worst comic book movies ever made.
Okay.
I'm kind of intrigued by the story, because I remember seeing the stills and the production photos, and this movie didn't look half bad at the time. I want to know what made it so bad they wouldn't even think about releasing it. But there are other shows that people wish there were sequels to, like Firefly.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a trailer that was released this week by a third-party artist, Stephen Byrne. I have not watched this purposefully because I wanted to experience this with you guys. He created a teaser trailer for his own Animated Adventures of Firefly project. I doubt that means he's making a series. He just made a trailer.
Yeah.
And this sounds intriguing to me. Do you guys think we should take a look?
Sure.
Definitely.
All right. I sent the video. Following preview has been approved for all brown coats.
Okay.
All right. It's Mal and the Mule.
Okay.
Flash animation.
Yep.
Oh, damn. Holographic wash. That's cruel, man. Wow.
Wait, didn't Shepard die?
Who?
Shepard, the black
Book?
guy. Yeah, Book.
I think so, but I don't recall seeing Book in there.
I don't either.
I thought I saw him in there.
That was actually kind of groovy.
You mean the black guy he was walking up to talk to?
That wasn't Shepard Book.
Agent.
That was was the hunter from the agency.
Right. I'm going through it again. I'm not seeing any.
It's when the doors are sliding up.
The doors sliding open. Yeah.
Maybe in a flashback
that would
scene.
have been maybe a flashback
Probably.
or something. Yeah.
If he could hire a voice cast and get permission to run a fan project, that was actually pretty nifty.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know if an animated show would be more work than it's worth if you're not being paid for it. That's all.
Yeah.
Screen Rant, last up in general media news. Screen Rant has a list that they put up that they call 15 Moments of Pure Geek Shame. I don't...
How did he define this?
Let me read to you the preamble quote. How about that? Quote, geeks have a wonderful history of passion, and the world generally regards their enthusiasm as a virtue. After all, what other subculture spends countless hours in celebration of a beloved character, or countless dollars on costumes and other memorabilia? Hey, he's talking about my life here. How many sports fans dress up as their favorite athlete, and how many music aficionados will pay hundreds of dollars and attend conventions just to hear a few bars of a new song? The sword of geek enthusiasm, however, can cut both ways. For as much fun the love and excitement of a particular property can provide, geeky devotion can mutate into more sinister and awful behavior. The subculture also has a history of harassment, insults, threats, jumping to conclusions, and general hysteria that don't reflect well on a group that made pacifistic Jediism into a real religion. The days of the internet have allowed geeky angst to spiral out of control, becoming malignant and vile behavior, with perpetrators hiding behind the anonymity of the web to protect their collective asses. Just how bad does it get? Throw on your nun's habit, get out a bell, and prepare for a walk of penance. Have a look at our 15 moments of pure geek shame, unquote.
Okay.
Do you want the highlights? I'll tell you what, I'll give you the highlights. Tell me if you want me to slow down.
Okay.
All right, number 15 on their list is death threats.
Okay.
It's true, man. People give out death threats for the most unbelievable stuff.
Yeah.
No, we've talked about that a couple different times. Item number 14 is an actual event that did occur a few years ago, a stabbing over a seat at Comic-Con. You guys have heard about that, I assume.
I don't know if I'm
It's
thinking
a
about
yes
the right
or no
story.
question.
I don't know. I was just reading something similar in Time.
Okay.
For this week, but yeah.
Quote, Comic-Con, festival of love, just like a geeky Woodstock. Or so it used to be. In 2010, heat and overcrowding took their toll on convention goers. Long lines had become the norm, especially for Hall H, the major venue where studios would show off their most prized coming attractions. That year, Marvel had announced a first look at the long-anticipated Avengers movie, which would figure a team-up of every character from their movie universe. Even better, the entire cast would appear on stage to answer questions and discuss their experience making the film. Naturally, geeks were stoked, but given that Hall H only seats 6,500 people and that some 300,000 people attend Comic-Con in a given day, disaster loomed. Just before the cast took to the stage, a rivalry broke out between two fans, with one accusing the other of stealing his seat. Things got violent as one fan stabbed the other in the eye with a pen.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Ooh.
I did remember this.
Programming in Hall H screeched to a halt as security broke up the fight and police arrived to arrest the assailant. Brother and sister geeks, no movie is worth blinding someone else. We already have had bad movies do that for you, unquote. Now, to clarify, he was stabbed in the eye socket. The pen did miss the eye. So, small virtue, I guess, but at least the guy's not half blind.
Yeah.
Item number 13, casting hysteria. We seem to talk about this almost weekly.
Yeah.
When people freak out because a particular actor doesn't fit the exact comic book form of a character. Hell, we talked about that lawyer with Zendaya and Mary Jane Watson.
Yep.
Item number 12, month-long protest that Revenge of the Sith won't show at Grauman's Chinese.
Wait, what?
Wait, what?
Quote, Star Wars fans are a special breed of geek. They turn their love of tales of a galaxy far, far away into a lifestyle, even a religion. Star Wars Mania returned last year with the release of The Force Awakens, though for some real ridiculous shenanigans, casual observers should look 10 years earlier. 2005 saw the release of Revenge of the Sith, and despite the mixed, even furious reaction to the other Star Wars prequels, fans lined up to see the film more than a month in advance. The shameful part? They lined up at the wrong theater. Fans at the time wouldn't admit as much. In fact, the snaking campout at the famous Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood claimed they set up their shantytown in protest. Every other Star Wars film had shown on that legendary screen, though schedule conflicts forced Revenge of the Sith to book into the ArcLight Cinema Dome down the street. Stubborn fans, many of whom protested in costume, finally relented not long before the film opening and led a protest march down Hollywood Boulevard to the ArcLight. At a time when the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq had become disastrous, personal freedoms curtailed under the Patriot Act, and gas prices skyrocketed, they probably could have better directed their rage, unquote. That's more than a bit dumb. Item number 11, constant purchase of every Star Wars re-release on home media. It's true. Every time one of those movies is re-released, they just vanish from shelves for reasons that are just beyond me. Item number 10, 4 awful Transformers movies and counting.
Oh, God.
Again, this is a list from ScreenRant.com of 15 moments of pure geek shame. Do I really need to read that?
No.
Okay. Item number 9, virtual pets.
Eh?
Quote, geeks love a good fad. How many folks have you spotted on the street playing Pokemon Go? Before smartphones changed everything, though geeks had another love affair with a digital device. The virtual pet started as a fad in the late 1990s. Players would buy a small device which featured everything from a puppy to Godzilla and raise a pet from birth. Players would also have to feed their virtual pet, play with it, put it to sleep, and clean up its excrement, which gave people all the responsibility of a real pet, but without any of the snuggles or the smell. Virtual pets came mostly from 2 companies, Tiger Electronics and Tamagotchi. The former would later release the Furby, an animatronic plush toy that would also behave like a real pet. Naturally, then, virtual pets became the bane of many a teacher's existence. Animal rights groups also protested the popularity of virtual pets, claiming that they misrepresented the responsibilities of owning a pet and took attention away from the real animals in need. Given the cost of some virtual pets and the speed with which the fad rose and fell, geek culture should feel a bit of embarrassment about the popularity of virtual pets. Granted, Cabbage Patch Kids are still probably even more of a ridiculous fad, but still, unquote. I never owned one of those things. I didn't have the patience.
I didn't either. I didn't see the appeal.
Yeah, and I had a dog. Item number 8, protesting the erasure of Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection. People protested that? I enjoyed Alien Resurrection. Yeah, I
didn't like it.
I enjoyed Alien Resurrection, didn't enjoy Aliens 3. Not sorry either one are gone, frankly. If they're gone, they're gone. That's it.
Yeah.
Item number 7, body shaming. Wow, they had an interesting version of that topic. I didn't know this was a problem. Quote, the stereotypical image of geeks does not include rippling muscles or slender figures. How ironic, then, that geek culture just loves to body shame. Poor Jennifer Lawrence, sirens of several beloved geek franchises, had to endure fat shaming from almost the moment she arrived on the pop culture scene. Her turn as Mystique in X-Men First Class earned her strong notices, though vile geeks tended to focus on her body shape, calling her too fat for the role.
I have no words.
It happened again a year later with the Hunger Games when fans denounced her, an athletic young woman playing an athletic young woman, for being too robust for the part. Former Prison Break star Wentworth Miller got raked over the coals early this year for gaining weight in semi-retirement. Cosplayer Sasha, the TARDIS princess, endured gruesome Facebook attacks after posting pictures of herself dressed as a TARDIS. The trolls attacked her for being too big to fit the costume. All of these instances might speak to a larger issue with pop culture and its expectations for men and women to look a certain way in order to qualify as sexy or attractive. For geek culture, though, one that is supposed to spurn the prejudices of the culture at large and welcome misfits and outcasts, such attacks are total hypocrisy. Memo to the body shamers. The ugliest person around is you, and it has nothing to do with your body, unquote. I'm going to cut in on that particular one, because I'm not sure the problem is what people find attractive. The problem is just how vocal people are about it. I see things every day from people who are not attractive to me, but I don't feel a need to go out and yell at them regarding whatever their potential flaws are. So I'm not sure it's body shaming so much as people just kind of poking their heads from around the anonymous internet and just yelling things that they should really just keep to themselves.
You don't have some tact?
Just a bit. I mean, people tend, in these types of issues, people tend to say that, like, magazines in Hollywood paint unfair portrayals of body image. It's not a matter of their painting, it's just a matter of what people are willing to accept. You know, shoot, I love my wife. She doesn't have a Hollywood figure, but that doesn't matter to me. You know, it's just a matter of enjoying what you enjoy and not trying to project that as the only thing that needs to be out there. It's like when people are shaming skinny people for dressing up as Steven Universe characters.
Because they need to be right.
Yeah. Item number 6 on this list, I think, is a pure point of geek shame. Gamergate.
Oh.
Do people even understand what that's about anymore is the question I generally have.
I still don't understand what it's about, and I don't give a flying fuck.
It started out as an understandable argument about how close potentially video game media is to the actual producers. They think it created unfair ratings. Somehow, it was taken over by vitriolic people, kind of like how Donald Trump took over the Republican Party. And then it somehow morphed into Gamergate being very much against women in general having a hand in the gaming industry. It's very bizarre to me.
Yeah.
Item number 5, sexism in the Ghostbusters. We've talked about that several damn times.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people freaking out just because women were cast. Forget how good the movie is. Women were cast. That's stupid. Item number 4, also something we talk about a lot, racism in genre pictures. People get upset that black people are cast in certain roles or are the lead in certain roles, like when people were yelling about John Boyega having a lead role in frickin' Force Awakens. Item number 3, spoiler hysteria. God, I get so sick of that. I appreciate that you don't want to know about a certain project, but at the same time, if you're on the internet, odds are you're going to know about a certain project.
Yeah.
You know, it's just one of those things. People want to talk about what they've seen. They have as much right to talk about what they've seen as you have the right not to listen to it. Item number 2, something we talk about on a regular basis, the Marvel-DC rivalry. This is an item of pure geek shame? The DC-Marvel rivalry is what makes it fun, frankly. Not I hate you and I hate your comic books, just who would match up? You know, why do you read X or Y, and why do you think the other one doesn't work for you? The conversations of this rivalry are fun as long as they're conversations.
Yeah, but most of them are not.
I think it's the ridiculousness that, you know, like the Star Wars versus Star Trek and how out of control that gets.
Yeah, I can see that. It's one of those cases where people discuss your fandom. Don't hate on other people's because you don't like it. Just discuss your fandom. That's all it takes. And what Screen Rant says is the number 1 item out of this list of the 15 moments of pure geek shame. I gotta agree, this is probably the worst thing that geeks have come up with. Twitter trolling. Quote, "Oh, shame of shames. The internet trolls strike again, and this time with grotesque and vile harassment. Twitter rose to popularity as a method of spewing snark and lifestyle updates in 140 characters or less. For all its practical use of disseminating news, Twitter also gets hijacked by trolls who use it as a method of the aforementioned racist or sexist attack. Ghostbusters star Leslie Jones quit Twitter after receiving a barrage of racist and sexist tweets over her performance. Prometheus writer Damon Lindelof did the same when Alien fans attacked him for straying too far from the original movie. Ditto geek darling Joss Whedon, who quit the social networking site following attacks from angry Marvel fans who didn't like his take on Avengers Age of Ultron. And that's just the tip of the proverbial iceberg. As Miss Love herself, the target of attacks for criticizing Jessica Simpson on Twitter, would no doubt point out, users exploit the anonymity of Twitter to harass others without reprisal. Geeks use it to spew racism, sexism, homophobia, and body image shame, when the only people deserving shame are the trolls themselves. It's a disgrace to the community and a massive embarrassment to humanity as a whole, unquote. Hey, I use Twitter just to spout bad jokes and stuff. I'm not going to use it to attack people. You know, if I got a problem with somebody, I'm going to bring it up, that's all. What do you say we move on to something that makes us hate ourselves a little bit less? Let's move on to Marvel comic news.
Okay.
That's where we talk about Marvel properties that will come to the comic book pages fairly soon. Civil War 2. We talked about how the 5th issue is being delayed for about 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
2 things have occurred. 1, Brian Michael Bendis has announced that Civil War 2 has added an extra issue. It's going to run to 8 issues now instead of 7.
Okay.
I would say that didn't work out badly for Secret Wars that had a very fully fleshed out ending by the time everything was done. But Bendis also talked about the unusual delay that hit. Remember that we just talked about that 4-week delay?
Mm-hmm.
He said on Tumblr, quote, "Well, if you peek over at David Marquez's Facebook, you'll discover that he and his amazing wife Tara just had a kick-ass baby boy.
Oh.
A very cute baby, too, and not all babies are cute at the start. Not a delay, hell, or conspiracy, just a new baby in the middle of the hardest issue to draw. The ending of 4 shows that 5 is a monster," unquote.
Okay, so just...
You're what?
A baby at an inopportune time. Yeah. He also said, quote, "I came up with a better ending, but needed the pages. Very grateful they let us do our thing," unquote, when he discussed the new issue 8 of Civil War 2. Now that we've understood the delay, I get it. You know, when that baby decides it's a-coming, it's a-coming. Any opinions on them expanding Civil War to an additional issue?
Well, I mean, they had a break. He had an idea. They decided to capitalize on doing so. Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Okay. There was an additional announcement when it came to Civil War number 8. It has a special tagline attached to it that makes it kind of ominous. The final issue of Civil War 2 is being called The Final Vision.
Oh.
Huh.
I don't think that has to do with the character, the Vision. Speculation right now is that there may be something disastrous happening with the last Vision available from the Inhuman Ulysses, who's at the center of the conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So, there was a teaser graphic sent with the announcement that features one of the panels from Civil War number 1 where the Avengers were facing down a Celestial.
Ugh.
Curiouser and curiouser.
Is Odinson in any of the...
Odinson has not returned as of yet, as you recall. He's supposed to return after Civil War 2.
And he's actually got a weapon that can deal with Celestials.
Well, he has one, but he's still captured right now, and he's a few finger lengths away from Ultimate Thor's hammer. But as you recall, the subject of this week is Doctor Strange. Kind of odd that this particular story comes up because a writer has been attached to Doctor Strange and the Sorcerer Supreme. That is the issue where Sorcerer Supreme from various parts of the timeline are being assembled by the Doctor to deal with a new threat. And it turns out that the writer attached to it is Robbie Thompson. Robbie Thompson has experience as a TV writer on the show Supernatural, of all things. And some of the Sorcerer Supreme that are being brought through time have very different designs on them. In addition to Doctor Strange will be a young version of the Ancient One. Sir Isaac Newton from the period he was working for the SHIELD organization. What appears to be a Native American woman called Kushala. And believe it or not, the person that brought all these together was not the good doctor himself. It was one of the first Sorcerers Supreme, Merlin.
Huh.
a very eclectic crew, and the ones I named aren't even the entirety of it. There's still Wiccan and another woman who I don't recognize on the cover. As well as one of the mindless ones, of all things. There's a story to be had there. There was a cover that was released for the all-new Avengers after the end of Secret War 2 and the relaunch of the series. It appears that the Avengers roster is getting slimmed down, but we kind of knew that there was a shift coming when we read that Kamala Khan, Miles Morales, and Nova were joining the Champions, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turns out this cover, most of those characters were not replaced. As a matter of fact, this new team features 3 members that were already on it, and 2 members who were prior Avengers, and 1 brand new member to the team. The Alex Ross cover has, in a circle from the upper left, Jane Foster's Thor, Sam Wilson, Captain America, Spider-Man, Peter Parker, the Red Wasp, Nadia Pym, the Vision, and at the 12 o'clock position, Hercules.
Hercules.
Hercules was an Avenger for a long time, man. I wonder if he's going to wear the sarong or the codpiece in this version. Take a look. Here's the Alex Ross cover, and you know Alex Ross, man. He does dynamic stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I'm liking this image. It's a good condensed team, too. No Iron Man in it, but then again, we know that Tony Stark is going wayside for Riri Williams to step into his boots.
Right.
I have questions, but I'm going to let it play out. You know, sometimes these guys know better than I do what's going to make a good comic.
It's going to be interesting to see, Peter Parker as a full-fledged member, in
again. Actually, do you think he's
extended capacity?
It just occurred to me, he may be fully stepping into the Tony Stark role of the Avengers. If you recall, now he's doing Parker Industries.
Yep.
You're right.
So he may be the one bankrolling the Avengers now. Speaking of Spider-Man, Spider-Man Deadpool number 8 is going to have an interesting writer attached to it. Oh, no, not number 8, number 11, sorry. Spider-Man Deadpool number 11 has an interesting writer attached to it. His name is Penn Jillette.
Really?
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
Of Penn and Teller. The Illusionist is actually writing Spider-Man Deadpool number 11 that's supposed to be released this November. It's going to be drawn by Scott Koblish. Penn Jillette said, quote, "I had to mull it over for like 2 or 3 seconds. I mean, what book could be more exciting? Of all the characters in comic books, it doesn't get better than Deadpool and Spider-Man. It's a dream come true for a lot of things," unquote.
Like one
Believe
being
it or
a
not,
ripoff of the other.
Hey, give Gillette some credit. This is not his first writing credit in comic books. He's worked on Detective Comics and Dark Horse Presents before.
Oh, cool.
As a matter of fact, there is a spin-off series coming post-Secret Wars 2. Spider-Man Renew Your Vows is going to be coming ongoing. That follows the alternative universe where Spider-Man and Mary Jane stayed married. And the odd part is, I knew that Spider-Man's child had powers in that universe. I read that many from Secret Wars.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I did not know was that his wife is also going to get a costume in this new series. Take a look at this. These are the character designs for Mary Jane Watson and young May Parker in this universe. Not quite understanding the design of Mary Jane's costume there.
It is kind of reminiscent of Spider-Gwen in a way.
A little bit, but I mean, it's basically It's more or less Spider-Man's costume with white where all the blue is.
Yeah.
And sneakers. It's been explained that May Parker's costume is a lot like parents would treat their children. When they're getting ready to do something, you armor them up. You give them knee pads, elbow pads, maybe a chest protector in this case, and a helmet.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure she could take a hit.
Well, she has the same kind of powers that Spider-Man has, so potentially she could, but there's no reason to allow a Goblin glider to go clean through her chest if you can avoid it.
True.
Here is the cover to the first Renew Your Vows. The costumes done by a full-blown, colorist, inker, and artist team look much better. Not quite as stark. The shading variant on Mary Jane's costume helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Still not wild about it, though. I think the bun is throwing me off. we've talked about that. It makes sense that women with long hair want to bundle up their hair. They don't want that to get yanked on. At the same time, though, it cuts down the sense of motion when you're doing pictures. And last up in Marvel comic news, Marvel is actually teaming up with the STEAM movement in schools. STEAM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Mathematics. Marvel is actually publishing a few comics that have covers that represent different themes. For example, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur number 13 will represent science. Spider-Man number 10, the Miles Morales series, will represent technology. Champions number 2 represents arts. Gwenpool number 8 represents mathematics. And an unseen Invincible Iron Man number 2 will represent engineering.
Steam will save the world.
Okay, you're a dick. According to Marvel's VP of Sales and Marketing, David Gabriel, quote, "With our new Steam variants, we plan to continue to motivate our fans to explore their passions in the fields of science, technology, engineering, art, and math, and present these disciplines through some of our favorite young heroes who are doing just that, following their dreams and preparing for the challenges that await them ahead," unquote. That's true. I didn't actually put together that all 5 of those covers represent characters who are on the young side of the generation gap in Marvel.
Mm.
You know, Gwenpool, the Champions, Miles Morales, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, and Invincible Iron Man, Riri Williams.
Yep.
It's very true. Next up is DC comic news. We'll talk about DC's major properties that are ahead for the comic book pages soon. First up, it appears that the Superman titles that are being solicited upcoming will deal with more of the fallout from the Watchmen reveal. As we've seen, Superwoman had a major twist where Lois Lane seemingly died in the very first issue, leaving Lana Lang as the sole Superwoman.
Right.
It turns out that Lois Lane was killed by a Bizarress. Ultra Woman is creating bizarro versions of herself and releasing them into the wild. There's also the possibility that there's some kind of connection between the New 52 versions of Clark Kent and Lois Lane in Death. Lois Lane mentioned just before she died that she understands everything now.
Huh.
There's no word as to what that means. But it's also been pointed out that during the rebirth, when Superman was the pre-Flashpoint Superman was deciding whether or not he was going to get involved in things since the New 52 Clark Kent died, he was approached by someone telling him that he and his family are not what he thinks they are. Which is kind of an interesting conundrum for a guy that's very obviously a Kryptonian. The thing is, though, the one thing I hadn't put together until I was reading this article was that the being that approached him also has minions that have recently attacked Superman. He identifies himself as Mr. Oz. Before Rebirth, that didn't make a lot of sense to me. But then I recalled, connecting this to the Watchmen, there's a character called Ozymandias.
Yes.
Right.
So it appears that the next few years, the next 2 years' worth of Superman books may revolve around Mr. Oz and the Watchmen connection. Sean Murphy's announced that he's gone DC exclusive. He signed a 2-year exclusive agreement. He's going to work on the already announced Scott Snyder arc of All-Star Batman and subsequent Elseworlds Batman series he'll be writing and drawing himself. Said, quote, "For the next few years, I'm exclusively working with DC on 2 Batman books, All-Star and one that I'm writing drawing. So if you're planning on reading my All-Star run, the finale, pick up Snyder's All-Star books now," unquote. As I would like to know what his Elseworlds thing is, man. I always like alternative universe stuff.
Mm.
I like it when things are different. What can I say? And last up, when it comes to DC comic news, remember how we talked about in Detective Comics, Batman was taken down by the Colony in General Kane, or Colonel Kane, excuse me. Detective Comics is also the story where he's helped form a team to discover what the Colony is up to. Orphan, Red Robin, Spoiler, and Clayface, led by Batwoman.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in issue 938, Batman had a damsel. The others came riding in to save his ass after the Colony took him down. It's not exactly the first time that Batman's needed to be rescued, but it's probably the first time that a whole cadre of his related sidekicks and associates have had to come in as a group to get him out of something.
Mm.
Hey, how often is it that Batwoman gets to ride in and save Batman? Like, never?
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good reason to get into Detective Comics later. This seems like the first time where Batman hasn't been the all-invincible, all-knowing a-hole.
Yeah, instead they have his uncle doing that job.
His uncle, yes, and then there's Alfred shooting Batwing, as you recall.
Yeah, I still don't know why.
I may wait a few issues before I get back into that, man. These things are better in arcs to me.
Yeah.
Next on the list is general comic and convention news. This is where we talk about the comics that are not Marvel and DC related, as well as conventions all around the world. First up is a story that very, very nearly ended up in WTF. It was close.
How bad? How bad is this?
Did you hear about what happened at Wizard World Chicago this past Thursday?
No.
No.
Oh, there was a seller who bought a booth space on Thursday. They set up, and a few hours later, they were told to take their crap and get out. 2 hours later.
Why?
The people running the booth was DS Arms, a gun manufacturer with a Chicago area factory showroom. They set up a booth full of gun replicas in Wizard World Chicago. Now, the guns were replicas. Granted, it's the same kind of things that cosplayers are sometimes looking for when they're trying to perfect a costume, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the issue was that they were also promoting gun and safety classes in the middle of the convention. And the DS Arms owner, Dave Silvaggio, was there himself giving attendees information about guns. Like how to procure.
Okay.
According to the Chicago Tribune, quote, just because people are fans of comic books and sci-fi doesn't mean they're not interested in protecting themselves and their family and their belongings, unquote. That's what Silvaggio told the Chicago Tribune. Part of the problem is that Wizard World has a very clear weapons policy, which I'm guessing DS Arms didn't quite fully disclose what they were going to do during the convention. Because just having the weapons usually is not a reason to get thrown out of a convention. I'm going to guess that they didn't quite disclose what they were bringing to the convention.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as long as they didn't, have like sword sellers or something like that, and they were allowed to stay, then
it is a very strange story because it's not quite the place I would go if I was going to hawk those particular types of wares.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as you said, the cosplay standpoint is valid.
It is, but it's also not exactly the type of weapons you're allowed to have around a convention. They're selling full replicas, not like orange tips or anything.
Oh. Yeah,
yes.
That wouldn't have
the
been...
realistic realistics. So that's the type of thing where if you sold and people started using it around the floor, you'd get into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Dragon Con has also announced that they're having their inaugural Dragon Awards this year. They have a lot of categories that have been listed on Newsarama. Best Science Fiction Novel, Best Fantasy Novel, including Paranormal, Best Young Adult / Middle Grade Novel, Middle Grade, yes. Best Military Science Fiction or Fantasy Novel, Best Alternative History Novel, Best Apocalyptic Novel, Best Horror Novel, Best Comic Book, Best Graphic Novel, Best Science Fiction or Fantasy TV Series, Best Science Fiction or Fantasy Movie, Best Science Fiction or Fantasy PC / Console Game. Why don't they just say video game? Best Science Fiction or Fantasy Mobile Game. Okay, that's why. Best Science Fiction or Fantasy Board Game. And Best Science Fiction or Fantasy Miniatures Collectible Card or Role-Playing Game. When it came to Best Comic Book, on the list is Astro City by Vertigo, Saga by Image, Civil War II by Marvel. I don't know if that's really fair. It's not done yet. Daredevil by Marvel, DC Universe Rebirth, DC, Miss Marvel by Marvel, and Providence by Avatar Comics. I've never been big into award shows is my issue.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the results. I'm not interested in the pageantry and the give-outs. That generally doesn't appeal to me. When it comes to comic book conventions, there's two very major forces in the U.S. That would be San Diego Comic-Con and New York Comic-Con. They are not related in any form. They're run by two separate companies. You know, Comic-Con in San Diego is Comic-Con International. Comic-Con in New York is ReedPop. And ReedPop has announced something big for New York Comic-Con this year. New York Comic-Con during October 7th and 8th will spill out into Madison Square Garden. There will be panels, Q&As, and screenings of upcoming television shows at one of the most famous arena venues in the world. According to a press release, quote, the weekend of New York Comic-Con programming at the theater at Madison Square Garden will kick off Friday, October 7th with a BBC America panel block featuring Doctor Who with star Peter Capaldi making his New York Comic-Con debut, along with the first ever fan appearance by new co-star Pearl Mackie, both joined by showrunner and executive producer. Ahead of its October 22nd premiere on BBC, the world premiere screening of BBC America's new original series, Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, followed by a panel with cast, showrunner, and writer and executive producer, and the first ever U.S. panel with the cast, executive producer, and creator of BBC's new Doctor Who spin-off series, Class, unquote. Crap! That's a nice way to start a new venue.
Yeah.
According to the global senior vice president of ReedPop, Lance Fensterman, quote, New York Comic-Con has become a premier destination for some of the world's most creative studios, and it only made sense to showcase them at one of the world's premier venues, the theater at Madison Square Garden. This expansion adds to New York Comic-Con's evolution of expanding into New York City and brags our passionate fans the opportunity to see different, unique content all across Manhattan during New York Comic-Con, unquote. That sounds incredible. New York Comic-Con is scheduled to take place October 6th through 9th this year. It's going to take place outside the Javits Center with other events planned at the Hammerstein Ballroom, Hudson Mercantile, Rock Bar New York City, and Littlefield, unquote. God, that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It sounds like an impressive weekend if you can make it.
Yeah, just about as busy as the one down here in San Diego.
I'd almost say more, knowing the traffic in Manhattan on a regular day.
True.
And then from Gen Con this year, from 2016, Ars Technica had a list of what they called the hottest board games from the convention. They listed Seafall, The Last Friday, Scythe, Pandemic, Reign of Cthulhu, Bloodborne, Bloodborne, the card game, Vast, the Crystal Caverns, Cry Havoc, Captain Sonar, Star Trek Ascendancy, The Ticket to Ride, Rails and Sails, The Networks, Via Nebula, Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition, Colony, Potion Explosion, America, City of Spies, Estoril 1942, Fight for Olympus, Star Trek Panic, London Dread, and that's it for their list.
2 out of all of those I've played.
Okay. IO9 and Evan Narciss say that the best Suicide Squad story they ever read is even being published by DC.
Okay.
According to them, there's another series that out-Suicide Squad's a Suicide Squad. And I'm trying to get the name of this series because they spend a lot of the story talking about the Suicide Squad. Oh, okay. They call it Copra, C-O-P-R-A. It's an independent superhero comic created and produced by Michelle Pfeiffer. They say that Copra has the quirk and personality that Suicide Squad should. It's an energetic homage pastiche to the tones that were prevalent in the cape and comics in the mid-1980s and 1990s. Stories are narrated with cranky first-person voices. There's a loving use of grimy artistic technique and skewed double-page layouts, and many characters are readily apparent analogs to popular Marvel and DC characters like Deadshot, Doctor Strange, and the Punisher. Doesn't quite sound like my kind of read. I'm looking at some of the visuals, and I see some of the allegories, man. The allegories to, like, Strange and the Punisher, very thin. Like, you'd almost expect it out of a What If comic, or a What The, like back in the day. And probably very notable to a lot of people who follow independent comic books, Robert Kirkman, one of the co-creators of The Walking Dead, he's announced the end to a series. Issue 144 will be the last issue of Invincible, his original story. You guys follow Invincible at all?
No.
No.
Invincible is a story I'd like to know more about, but it's a lot to get into. Imagine a teenage boy finds out one day that not only is he superpowered, but he is the son to one of the greatest heroes the world has ever known, Omni-Man. And it's very much a Superman-style allegory. You know, his father is from an alien planet. He's a hybrid. You know, his father had sex with his mother, and there he came out. He has a younger brother. He has to wonder if he has powers. And not only that, he finds out that his father is a sleeper agent for an alien race that's coming to take over the world.
Oh.
And then there's how you deal with all that. Like I said, it's one of those stories that sounded really interesting to me, but, you know, because of budgetary issues, I've never really picked up more than a couple issues of Invincible at a time.
Mm.
And then, you know, there's a lot that happens and it gets disjointed, and I have trouble following it from there. I should really sit down and read a couple volumes. Last up is our WTF corner. Those stories from across the internet that make you ask, seriously, the blue fart are you doing, man? And first up is an interesting story. Disney has come up with a new technology that they recently patented that has to do with the Star Wars lands they're building. I say that because they've apparently developed a technology where you can pretend to deflect lasers with some kind of light sword.
Okay.
According to the patent's abstract, quote, a process and system capture infrared light that is reflected or emitted from a device to precisely locate the device. The process and system project visible light from a light source toward the device such that the light is precisely targeted at the device. Preferably, the visible light passes through an atmosphere containing particulate matter, rendering the visible light beam that appears to emanate from the device rather than from the light source, unquote. It sounds like they're coming up with a live-action version of the drone trainer from Star Wars A New Hope. Dude, if they can make that work, could you imagine the line outside that ride or event or whatever you want to call it? There will be fat people all over the place just asking, can I bring my own saber, man? I built my own. Can I bring it? You imagine those conversations?
Sorry, due to liability, you are not allowed to bring...
Yeah. The story, according to Fox News, has an English version of that of the explanation from the patent. Visitors will walk into a theater where the air is filled with some particulate matter, such as water vapor, condensed water, liquid nitrogen, dust, or theatrical fog, and will be given an LED beaming lightsaber that transmits infrared light. Small drones flying above you, or stationary objects like disco balls, shoot out beams of light that your lightsaber's LED beams are visible due to the particulate matter in the air. When your lightsaber's IR rays intersect with the light form from the objects above you, it creates the illusion of deflecting a laser beam.
Huh.
That would be groovy, actually, if they made that work.
That would be fun.
Have you guys ever had to try to prove something in D&D when you play a game? Has there ever been anyone that just looked at you and called bullshit?
All the time.
In what way?
Well, apparently last Saturday, a D&D dungeon master couldn't find a by-the-book approach to a comically specific role-playing scenario. Drinking a potion underwater one-handed.
Okay.
So he asked a role-playing forum what to do. Quote, ask for a dex check? What DC? Is it even possible? I can't find anything in the books about using potions underwater in the first place, and I don't know how to rule it myself. The main problem I see is the potion simply spilling into the water, so knowing how potions work underwater in the general case of having two hands available would be a good start. How do I make a ruling about this? Unquote. So, Dungeon Master Ikra, a self-proclaimed huge dumb nerd, decided to go the opposite route of just sitting down and puzzling out how to do this. He decided to get a bathtub, a bottle of Red Guitar wine, a thumb, and figure out if this would work.
Okay.
Quote, I am a huge dumb nerd, so I just went and proved this for myself with a bathtub and a bottle of Red Guitar. By pulling the cork with my teeth and immediately folding my thumb over the lips of the bottle, I managed to leak only the merest iota of wine. If I had the clearance to stand upright instead of kneeling there, like a moron, dunking my head and holding the bottle sideways, then the only leak would have been from the margin of air at the top of the container. Having replaced the seal with my finger, it was then no effort to simply wrap my lips around that of the bottles, extract my thumb, and emit air from my lungs to equalize the pressure and allow a couple of sips. You can do this yourself without getting your head wet or finding a beverage with a cork. So my answer is, yes, this is a trivial exercise. Even asking for a dex check would be too much. Only a small child would have a particularly difficult time with this. You might as well ask for a strength check to extract your foot from your shoe, unquote. To which I say, dude! I appreciate that he went that far, but seriously, man, there's got to be other ways to spend your time.
The things nerds do when they're bored.
Yeah, I'm sure he was proving something to himself at that point. It was one of those.
That's usually the kind of
this question intrigues me. I need to find out.
That's usually the kind of thing you don't just prove to yourself, though. That's usually a dare that comes from a room of at least 5 people. Or something you might see on MythBusters. Okay, that too. But that's usually a dare by a group of 5 people. IO9 and Catherine Trendacosta had an interesting list that they called the 10 most overtly specific supervillains in comics.
Okay.
In other words, comic book characters that are a little too on the nose. You know what I mean?
All right.
Villains specifically. Number 1 on this list is a DC character called Egg Foo. Can you imagine what Egg Foo is?
I have an idea I don't want to say.
I'll tell you what. First, I will start with an image. And yes, Egg Foo is a Chinese man that is somehow shaped like an egg, but he's not just shaped like an egg. He is shaped like an egg that appears to be about 20 stories tall. It is as insulting and racist as you imagine. Quote, there is just so much going on here. It's a pun on Chinese-American dish and martial arts. It's a name given to an actual giant egg villain. And because he was created in the 60s, a giant communist egg. And look at that drawing. How is that ever acceptable? I somehow doubt Egg Foo's making it into the Wonder Woman movie, unquote.
That's a Wonder Woman villain? Oh, God.
Don't know, don't care.
Move on.
Okay, the next one is actually a Cage villain from Marvel, the Hypno Hustler. Quote, what are you laughing at, Marvel? At DC's giant communist egg? Because you guys created the Hypno Hustler, a man who used disco music to hypnotize audiences in order to steal their belongings. There is absolutely no chance that this character, appearing a few years after The Hustle was at the top of the music chart, while The Hustle was at the top of the music charts, wasn't named as a pun on that song. You see, he plays disco music and he steals. Also hypnosis. Which probably has a lot more uses than picking the pockets of teenagers at a club. The Hypno Hustler as a no vision, unquote.
Sounds like a weird version of
It was 3 stereotypes wrapped together into a package, dude.
No, I'm thinking about DC equivalent. They renamed him Vibe.
They didn't rename him that. That was his name.
Oh, okay.
That was his first name.
I'm just going to go back to the first one, the Egg Foo, and say that the dialogue is also horribly racist.
Yeah, the only way it could be worse...
They replaced all the R's with L's.
Yeah, the only way this could be worse is if he asked for fried lice.
That would just make it more obvious, but yes, that...
I hate you.
Item number 3 is a 3-way tie between Paste Pot Pete, the Scissor Men, and the Living Eraser. Quote, I get it's hard to come up with themes for all of these people. Villains and heroes and sidekicks, everyone's got to have their thing. And I also get that most writers take inspiration from things in their own lives. The lives mostly consist of sitting at desks. That does not excuse the veritable glut of villains based on office supplies. Paste Pot Pete, skill, sticking things to other things, smartly rebranded as the Trapster. The Scissor Men are a race of beings with giant scissors for hands. The Living Eraser uses a device on his hands to transport people to a prison dimension. He wipes his hands on them and they're erased, which makes him more like the living whiteboard microfiber cloth than an eraser. Also, was living a necessary part of his name? He was unlikely to be the Dead Eraser, unquote. Item number 4 is Flag Smasher, the Captain America villain. How aware are you of this one? I had to read a bit to uncover this.
I was aware of the name, but that's all.
Quote, I love Flag Smasher, because it's literally an attempt to personify anti-patriotism. No, not anti-Americanism. That would be dumb, but this is even less concrete than that. It's like they didn't want to make a villain of Captain America's too U.S.-centric, so they tried to create a man who generally hates nationalism. He hates it so much. He hates it so much that he waged a campaign to rid New York of nationalist symbols. That's code for literally smashing flags. He created a society called Ultimatum, or the Underground Liberated Totally Integrated Mobile Army to Unite Mankind. He speaks Esperanto, the only language truly devoid of nationalism. Flag smasher, because fuck flags, that's why, unquote.
Wow.
I'm amazed at that, what do you call it? The anacronym?
Yeah.
The Underground Liberated Totally Integrated Mobile Army to Unite Mankind. That's impressive, man. You put work into that. That's awesome. Item number 5 on this list of the 10 most overly specific supervillains in comics, the Goat Face Girl.
Oh.
Okay.
Wait till you hear this. Quote, literally a girl in a goat mask. Incredibly specific with no accompanying special powers. Unquote.
Okay, I thought she actually had a goat face, so,
Nope.
At least it's a mask.
Yeah, just a goat face mask, no powers. That's it. Item number 6, Signal Man. I don't know which Oh, I'm sorry, he's a DC villain. Get this. Quote, have you ever looked around and thought to yourself, man, there are a lot of signs and symbols in the world? If no, congratulations. A useful component of everyday life just sort of passed you by. If yes, congratulations. You too can be a confusing villain of Batman's. Someone who commits crimes while leaving behind a bunch of symbols as clues. Because it's not a real crime if you don't purposefully leave behind a calling card. Unquote.
Is this a knockoff Riddler?
Actually, Riddler would leave riddles, not full-blown symbols and clues. It's okay. The next one, number 7, is another Batman villain I have never heard of before and I never want to hear from again. Polka Dot Man.
Oh, God.
Quote, I think a few quotes from various wikis sum up the strangeness of Polka Dot Man. First up, the Batman wiki has, the Polka Dot Man was a cunning criminal whose crimes revolved around the general theme of dots. The general theme of dots. That's not a general theme. That's a very specific and very weird one. How about this from the DC database? Abner Krill decided for reasons unknown to launch a crime wave based on spots and dots. No reason! Just a love of polka dots. I guess. He weaponized the ones on his outfit, too. Just cuz, unquote.
The early days of comics
Guys,
weird.
we need a new villain. We're getting nowhere with the ones that we've got right now.
And it's too hard to draw Plaid Man. It's okay, the next one is another Batman villain, the Condiment King.
Oh.
Quote, Condiment King comes from Batman the Animated Series, but absolutely deserves his place on this list. He's a comedian brainwashed by the Joker into committing crimes. He makes condiment-based puns, at least until he slips on ketchup when Batman chases him down. Yes, as with all villains, his greatest weakness is irony, unquote.
He did appear in comics at one point. I do recall that. But
well, he first appeared in the animated series, just like Harley
I do
Quinn.
remember that. I do remember that.
The next one is another DC villain. However, this is one that ends up on a lot of worst villain lists. I've read his articles before. The Ten-Eyed Man. You guys recall this at all?
No.
You'll remember when we start reading this. Quote, I would like some of whatever Frank Robbins, Irv Novick, and Dirk Giordano were on when Ten-Eyed Man was created. How do you create someone with eyes on the end of each of his fingers? More importantly, why do you create a man with eyes on the end of his fingers? And why all of his fingers? Why did the doctor who attached Philip Reardon's optic nerves to his fingers, comic book medicine is so great, not stop at 2 fingers? How did his brain adjust from being built to accommodate 2 eyes to dealing with 10? 10-eyed just brings up so many questions, unquote. His optic nerve grafted into his fingers. Science!
I don't think it works like that.
And number 10 on this list from IO9 and Catherine Chen-DaCosta of the 10 most overly specific supervillains in comics, Lady Stiltman. I said that correctly. Lady Stiltman. Quote, Stiltman, a name sure to strike fear into the hearts of heroes everywhere, was already a very odd choice for a villain in 1965. That weirdness was doubled down on in 2010 with the introduction of Lady Stiltman. Like the man with stilts, but a lady. But not Stilt Lady, or Stilt Woman. Lady Stiltman, unquote. I like Lady Stiltman. I like Lady
thought
Stiltman for all the reasons people don't like her.
I'll be honest, I thought it was a Stiltman wearing, lady versions of his stilts. That was the first thing that came to my mind.
You thought it was Lady Cross-Dressing Stiltman?
I guess.
Okay, we're going to have a chat later. There's a woman in Moscow who was claimed to be raped by Pokemon.
What?
I am dead serious. A woman hailing from Moscow recently reported to police she was sexually assaulted by a Pokemon while playing Pokemon Go. She's married. She said she was playing the game in her apartment before falling asleep, waking up to discover that a giant Pokemon was supposedly on top of her.
Someone can't discern fantasy from reality.
Yeah.
She told her husband the news, causing the concerned man to tell police her tale. And the police dismissed her claims and instructed her to seek psychiatric help.
Yes. Probably a wise, bit of advice there.
Oh, she did seek help. She went to a psychic.
What?
Wrong one.
This woman then told a friend about her plight. The friend said, quote, she says there are too many Pokemon in her place and even the dog can sense them. She says the dog barks whenever she plays Pokemon Go, unquote.
Sure it's not because of the MIDI sounds?
I wasn't sure it wasn't because the dog could actually smell the ozone from this lady playing Pokemon Go a little too much. Finally, the woman has seen a psychiatrist. However, it's very unlikely that her issues with Pokemon will go away anytime soon.
Well, she would have to stop playing.
Do you think she's looking for horsies in the shower? As long as she's not looking...
discovers a cloister.
And then her legs are wrapped up by tentacruels. Baby, I want you to take my Diglett and put it in your Meowth till it turns into a Doug Trio. Then I'm going to jam it in your cloister till you Squirtle.
Yeah.
We are awful. We are awful.
Oh, that's going to end up on Twitter somewhere. Unfortunately, WTFs can also be very sad when it comes to the internet. And there were police in Franklin, Ohio, who had a very sad story to tell. Police found a boy wandering the streets in downtown Franklin. He was trying to sell his teddy bear because he was hungry.
Oh.
Officer Steve Dunham responded to a call from a resident about the 7-year-old, and he said, quote, it broke my heart. So, Officer Dunham nicely took the boy to eat at a Subway, and 2 other officers went to the child's home. Guess what they found?
What? Nothing?
More kids.
Oh.
In a house filled with garbage, liquor bottles, and cat urine. There were parents living there creating this mess. According to the report, the children's parents created, quote, a substantial risk of health and safety by neglecting the cleanliness in the residence, having a large amount of bugs and spoiled food throughout the residence, not having properly prepared and packaged food for the minor children to eat, unquote. The parents are named Tammy and Michael Bethel. They told police they didn't realize the 7-year-old wasn't in the house. All 5 of the kids have been removed by Warren County Children's Services and placed with relatives. George ordered the parents not to have any contact with the kids. Dude, God damn it. I don't know if you could... I know that social services and foster care in this country is not good, but I hope the police took a serious look at the relatives they dropped these kids with before they left.
Yeah.
However, the 7-year-old boy did make several new friends at the police station. Police Chief Russell Whitman said, quote, officers see this nationwide every day, and they do go above and beyond to feed homeless, feed children. They treat people like their own family. You can look at your local police departments wherever you're at, and you can find stories like this, unquote. Officer Dunham did have another run-in with a child after he filed some paperwork. He said, quote, I came back to check on him, and he was hiding. He jumped out to scare me when I came back in the building, and he got me real good. Unquote. That's just sad as hell, man.
Yeah.
You know, the kid is actually selling his prized toy so he could eat something. He must have been desperate. Not all criminals are malicious. Some of them are just stupid. There was a woman in Kentucky early...
Kind.
Oh, there was a woman in Kentucky early Tuesday morning. She was arrested for possession of crystal meth. No word on intent to sell. No words on manufacturing. She was 37. Her name is Deborah Asher. She was snagged with an accomplice, Richard Rice, by Laurel County officers who said the duo were in possession of 3.37 grams of crystal meth, digital scales, and a T-shirt that she was wearing that says, and I shit you not, I love crystal meth.
On the nose villain?
The only way this could have been better is if that shirt said, I love being arrested for crystal meth. You just wonder what some people do. Actually, there's another story here that makes you wonder what people do. There was a man in Texas who was shot by an armadillo.
Okay.
Armadillo?
Yeah, I know how I said that. Pace with me here. Officials in Cass County, Texas said a man suffered a graze wound to the head when he fired at an armadillo and the bullet ricocheted off the damn thing's hide and came back at him. This took place around 3 a.m. this past Thursday around the 27,000 block of Highway 77 in the Marietta area of Texas. The victim, who was also the shooter, I guess, was taken to a local hospital to be treated for minor injuries. The gunman has not been named, and I doubt he ever wants to be named. There's no word at this time as to the armadillo's status, however, I imagine he's run across the border now that he's wanted for a shooting.
I'm suddenly reminded of Armored Armadillo from Mega Man X.
This isn't the only time this has happened, though. This past April, a 54-year-old man named Larry McElroy in Leesburg, Georgia, shot at an armadillo and ended up accidentally shooting his mother-in-law in the back.
Oh.
Because, again, ricocheted off the hard shell of an armadillo and struck his mother in the back.
I didn't realize the hide was that hard.
They are. In the Georgia case, the armadillo did not survive. So apparently the impact is enough, and the blunt force trauma is enough to kill an armadillo if you hit it right.
And apparently also your mother-in-law.
It didn't say the mother-in-law died. However, I'm sure as soon as she was on her feet and able to walk with a cane, she beat her son-in-law to death with it. Now that we've had these unusual stories and these kind of sad stories, I'm going to give you another happy one. You remember last week we saw a little bit of video of a kitten attacking its friend the husky?
Right.
And the husky was not having any of his crap?
Uh-huh.
This is a Russian video of a dog who is way too helpful with its owner when the cat goes outside. And it's not a big dog. It's a small dog. You will not believe the lengths this dog goes through when its owner wants that cat back in the damn house. I sent the video. So you see that small dog hopping up and down? Mm-hmm. There on the ledge is the cat, and that dog is really working, isn't it? So this lady walks up with a camera, and there's the cat that just doesn't want to go anywhere, and there's that little chihuahua colored like a Rottweiler. Mm-hmm. Trying to herd the cat, not really working, so it just runs underneath and grabs an arm and starts walking with the cat on its back. That is a smart dog, and that's a very patient cat.
A very lazy cat, I think.
That's like the dog version of The Undertaker. Just pick him up and carry him away. There we go, in the house. Done.
And all you're missing is rolling.
Now get in the kitchen! That's an amazingly smart dog. It's one of those stories that wasn't really centered to comic books, but it put a big smile on my face as soon as I saw it.
Yep.
I also have a list from Screen Rant, do we want it now or later, of the 15 most WTF moments in Batman comics.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Tell me when you want me to slow down. Item number 15, Batman dresses up as a rainbow.
Okay.
You're not aware of this period in comics?
No.
Quote, everyone has a favorite Batsuit color scheme. All black, all blue, black and gray, blue and gray. The possibilities were endless. Like in the time Batman dyed all of his Batsuits different colors in a convoluted plot to distract some goons from learning Robin's true identity. In 1957's Detective Comics number 241, Dick Grayson injures his arm while saving a little girl from runaway thieves. To prevent the crooks from connecting the injury to the Boy Wonder, Batman decides his only rational course of action is to wear colorful, eye-catching outfits. The whole thing culminates in Batman thwarting the criminals while wearing a rainbow costume, providing the Cape Crusader the opportunity to finally say things like, "They'll find no gold at the end of this rainbow, only prison." Most likely, no one's going to say that their favorite Batsuit is the pink one. And sure, it might seem a bit extreme for Batman to go to such lengths on the infinitesimal chance someone would link Dick Grayson and Robin via a bruised arm. Then again, everyone could use a little color in their life from time to time, even the Dark Knight. And as far as Batsuits go, these are definitely better than the zebra suit or the one worn when, unquote. What? The one they consider worse is item number 14. Zur-En-Arrh hangs out with Batmite. You don't know this either, do you?
No.
I know who Batmite is. I don't know the other guy.
Quote, Batman R.I.P. is weird. In 2008, a comic book alchemist, Grant Morrison, took a stab at bringing back some obscure tropes from the Silver Age in a story arc spanning Batman 676 to 681. It revolves around the appearance of a backup personality created by Bruce Wayne so he could keep fighting crime if he ever suffered a psychological attack, called the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh. The name derives from a young Bruce mishearing his father's last words. The sad thing is, they probably throw someone like Zorro in Arkham. Now, while all that sounds good and normal for Batman, the fact that this Zur-En-Arrh persona is fueled by crystal meth and dresses in a brightly colored batsuit fashioned out of trash is a bit more ridiculous. But as absurd as all that may seem, Morrison's effort is still commendable, if not entertaining at times. That is until Batmite shows up. Batmite is proof some things from the past are better left there. As psychotic, drugged-up hobo Bruce Wayne starts to get his Zur-En-Arrh on, he also starts taking advice from a small imp from the Fifth Dimension who dresses like a freak show version of Bat-Kid. Going by the moniker Batmite, it turns out that he's nothing more than a hallucination acting as Batman's voice of reason. Back in 1959, when the character first appeared, the campy fun of Batmite seemed right at home. Here in the dark, effed-up world of Batman Rest in Peace, his appearance is downright bizarre. The fact that this Bat-Imp is a byproduct of Batman's imagination goes to show just how kooky the mind of Bruce Wayne really is, and how important it is that Batman never get high, unquote. Item number 13, Batman sings Christmas carols with the police. Dear God.
Next.
Item number 12, Batman kills the KG Beast to save Ronald Reagan.
Okay, I think that's self-explanatory.
Well, not exactly. The KG Beast was trying to kill Ronald Reagan, and he had bested Batman in a few different turns. Batman ended up fighting him in the sewer, and both of them were injured. And instead of making this a straight-up fight, Batman backed out of the room, shut the door, and boarded it up, leaving the man to die.
Huh.
I kid you not, it's the last time KG Beast has ever been seen. Item number 11 is Bat Baby.
Not... Okay.
Quote, a lot of the Golden Age Batman comics are just wholesome fun that can be forgiven for their silliness because of when they were created. Some, however, are just too stupid to ignore, no matter what the decade. So it goes in 1961's Batman number 147, when a mad scientist ray gun turns Batman into an infant who decides to continue fighting crime under the guise of Bat Baby. Of course, Bat Baby isn't just any old boring baby. The toddler retains all the intelligence and strength of adult-sized Batman, only now packed into an adorably chubby, pint-sized frame, fitted with black overalls and a modified cowl that snugly fits over his fat baby head. Think of a chibi, only more creepy. If the sight of a 4-year-old dressed as Batman swinging into a warehouse of criminals trying to shoot him isn't enough of a reason to shake your head in embarrassment, then surely that moment arrives when Batman proclaims, "Robin, I never thought there'd be a time when you'd have to carry me in your arms like a baby." Sadly, neither did we, Batman. Neither did we, unquote. No?
Hey,
Item number 10 on the 10 most WTF moments in Batman comics, according to ScreenRant.com. Two-Face tries to turn a gay woman straight. That phrase is so DC it bothers me.
Truly.
Item number 9. Robin gets a little too excited around Batgirl.
Okay.
I take it you want to know this.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Okay. Quote, Robin number 1 and Batgirl have a strange history. A large chunk of the relationship between Dick and Babs is covered pretty thoroughly in Nightwing Annual number 2, which includes a rather awkward brush-up on their first date. Most notably, the two get trapped in a safe by Crazy Quilt, and Robin gets excited. That better be your utility belt pushing against my leg. It doesn't take Batgirl long to realize Robin has more on his mind than catching stupidly named bad guys. Seeing the Boy Wonder break out into a cold sweat and try frantically to think clean thoughts is a tad unsettling, especially when you consider what would have happened if Batman hadn't saved them at that very moment. As unnecessary and inappropriate as all of this is, the scene is made all the worse when the writers decide to double down and have Batman inquire about what's going on in Robin's short pants, unquote.
Oh, Lord.
Wow. Wow.
It's almost shaming that that's a relatively current story. Item number 8, Batman wets himself. You guys know about that story?
No.
No.
Do you want to know about that story?
I don't
No.
think so, but...
Okay. All I can say is it happened in an issue of Batman Year 1, written by Kevin Smith.
Huh.
Okay.
It's canon. Item number 7 of the 15 most WTF moments in Batman comics. Subtextually sexual, out-of-context single panels.
That was a mouthful.
Quote, of all of Batman's worthy foes, one is proven time and time again to be the hardest to defeat. Contextualization. We've touched on how a certain level of circumstance should be considered when discussing any WTF moment, particularly with regards to the Bestial Golden Age. However, sometimes a single panel comes along that's just too good to pass up and leaves the reader wondering just exactly what were they thinking when it was made. Take, for instance, the time Batman sent the Joker a Christmas card in Arkham Asylum, wishing him a gay time in jail. Or, how about the one where Robin gets Batman good and wet? Then again, it's no surprise that the majority of these involve Robin in some position or another. Though having the Boy Wonder ask Batman about the teeth marks he left in a leather thong seems wrong no matter what the occasion.
What?
Always the equal opportunist here, Batman tells an obliging Catwoman, quiet or Papa Spank. Remember when the Joker made a porno with Batman and a goat? But don't think all are from bygone eras. For example, there's this gratuitous panel from Batman Odyssey, and what would this be without one mention of Batgirl getting creeped on? Or two. Of course, sometimes the moment goes well beyond a single panel, which perfectly segues us into, unquote.
Then, okay.
They posted some weird panels here, including one of Robin running out of a room with Batman close behind him. Robin, thanks! Whew, my Weezer still wobbly.
Oh, God.
Item number 6 is the Joker trying to induce Batman's greatest blunder. Remember we were just talking about out-of-context panels?
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Quote, the Joker is easily one of the greatest villains of all time. That doesn't mean he hasn't had an embarrassing gaffe or two along the way. One of the biggest came from Batman number 66, when after a failed robbery that the press deems the boner of the year, the Joker becomes obsessed with recreating some of history's most famous mistakes to force Batman into making similarly embarrassing errors. If you've ever had the opportunity to read this gem in its entirety, please do so immediately. We'll wait. The sheer lunacy of the plot and the impressive number of uses the writers find for the word boner is enough to turn the most steadfast of nuns into a fit of giggles. Remember that episode of South Park where they throw out the S word a blistering 162 times? This is kind of like that, except there's no moral at the end of the story. Merely Batman saying things like, while you were so busy forcing me into a boner, you forgot you were committing one yourself. To be fair, this comic came out in 1951, and by the standards of the day, it might not have seemed that ridiculous. Giving the term also means blunder. But we've done some fact-checking, and without going into the etymology of the word, it definitely had the same sexual connotation back then as it does today. Don't believe for a second the writers didn't know what they were doing when they had Commissioner Gordon tell Batman, I'm worried about the boner he's readying for you. Unless you also think that Disney animators don't subliminally insert obscenities into their movies, unquote. Item number 5 on this list is pretty much all of Batman Odyssey.
Okay.
Do you want to know, or should I just go on?
I'm curious.
Wow. Quote, welcome to the most bonkers Batman story ever told. But first, a little background. After Adam West did his best to make Batman the corniest fictional character in history, famed artist Neil Adams single-handedly turned the Dark Knight into the brooding, masked vigilante we all know and love today. Adams eventually left DC to work on other projects, but in 2010 he returned to bring us Batman Odyssey. Having said all that, you would think this was a reason to celebrate, but it turns out while Neil Adams is an artist without rival, his writing is far less inspired. Every issue starts off with a naked and unsettlingly hairy Bruce Wayne incoherently blabbering about pretty much everything that's ever happened to him in no particular order. This includes a history of trains traveling to the center of the Earth, meeting the original Egyptian gods, meeting a Neanderthal dressed as Batman, Batman barking, Batman napping, Batman riding dinosaurs, Batman fighting a telepathic Cyclops, and Batman saying odd things like such as an octopus of a thing. There's a lot, and we mean a lot, of exposition describing exactly what we see on the page, from one disjointed story to the next, without any of them ever really finishing, and always somehow ending up back on nude Bruce, who keeps getting more and more uncomfortably close to the reader. Overall, you get the feeling that Batman Odyssey is Neil Adams' Joycean attempt to create the Ulysses of Batman comics. Unfortunately, it comes off more as if you got trapped in a room with a drunk Christopher Walken pretending to be Batman, unquote.
Wow.
I have no words. Item number 4 on this list. Batman gets it on with Black Canary after setting a bunch of people on fire. What?
Context?
Quote, fact. Batman likes to have sex with his suit on. Just check out the first issue of the New 52 Catwoman to see how much. He also likes to kill people more than you'd think. Well, on one special night in All-Star Batman and Robin number 7, he had the opportunity to do both when Black Canary, dressed a bit promiscuously, turns up on some docks to take on a horde of criminals. They prove too much, so she hides behind some crates. Luckily, Batman arrives on the scene to save her, brutally pummeling the thugs and setting them all on fire with a bottle of bleach. Not content, he continues to beat the lowlifes while they burn alive, which increasingly turns on Black Canary until she leaps from her hiding place into his arms. As the men fry to death behind them, the superheroes celebrate by bumping uglies with their masks on. You know, because it's better that way. Pretty much everything about Frank Miller's... Oh god, that explains everything. All-Star Batman and Robin is out of character for Bats. Throughout, he calls Robin retarded, makes the boy wonder eat rats, paints himself yellow so he can bully the Green Lantern. Don't worry, they get him back. And constantly refers to himself as the goddamn Batman. But watching him have sex with Canary on a rain-drenched dock as a group of men burn to death in the background just seems wrong. It's a little reminiscent of the oddward mid-air boot-knocking in Watchmen, minus all the charred bodies. Shagging plays a big part in Batman's life, and we won't even touch on the time Talia al Ghul roofied him into getting her pregnant. But of all of Batman's sexual exploits, this one might take the cape. On second thought, unquote.
Next.
Oh my god.
Which segues into item number 3, Batman gets Batgirl pregnant.
In what universe?
Let's find out. Would you like to know more?
No.
I'm gonna have to now.
Time. Damn it.
Quote, the Bat family is spectacularly incestuous. Luckily, they're not really a family. Somehow, though, that doesn't make Batman getting Barbara Gordon pregnant any less horrible, especially given that she was in a relationship with Dick Grayson at the time. Not cool, Bats. If you ever needed proof that the Dark Knight can be a huge jerk, this is it. Sure, a comic based on the futuristic animated TV series Batman Beyond isn't exactly canon, but Batman should know better than to get it on with girls nearly half his age that look up to him as a father figure. That's just math. What's worse, when Batgirl tells Bruce Wayne about the pregnancy, he promises he'll stay out of it and let Barbara break the bad news to Dick herself. He then immediately breaks his promise by going and telling Dick everything. Oh yeah, and while he's waxing poetic about just how big of a super scumbag he is, Barbara suffers a miscarriage. Really not cool, Batman, unquote.
Oh my god.
Who wrote this?
I don't know, it's a Batman Beyond comic, and I understand the argument that Batman Beyond may not necessarily be canon, but I think DC's folded it all in, so that may technically be canon. Item number 2, the Batman laughs with the Joker.
I think I know where this was from.
Yeah, it's the Killing Joke. Should I go over it, or should I leave it?
Nah, I think we understand what that is.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 1 on the list of Screen Rant and Mark Zambrano's 15 most WTF moments in Batman comics is Batman cries with Superman over alien tentacle sex.
Holy what?
I did not make that up. Batman cries with Superman over alien tentacle sex.
It sounds like something you could make up.
I know, it sounds like something I would make up, but I did not. Do you want me to read what the frick this is?
Yes.
Yes, because My mind is going places it shouldn't at the moment.
No Batman Domo! Yamate! Yamate! Quote, Batman and Superman have shared some moments over the years. All of a sudden I regret that Yamate moment. But none are as disturbing... But none as disturbing as the time they were both moved to tears over watching a group of alien space slugs have sex. The world's finest comics are perhaps best known for having had a slew of WTF covers, like the one where Robin beckons Batman and Superman to join him in skinny dipping with a bunch of young boys. As hard as something like that may be to top, issue 289 does the seemingly impossible when Supes invites Batman over to the Fortress of Solitude to discuss their feelings. After a while of silently staring into one another's eyes, a meteor spacecraft crashes nearby. Why? Because at that moment, the Fortress of Solitude has become the most emotionally honest place in the entire universe. We learn all of this is because a bunch of alien tentacle worm-like creatures come tumbling out of the craft and tell us so, then followed up with a nightmarish orgy that will undoubtedly haunt you forever. Obviously, there's a lot to cover here. These ghastly things were sent by an alien race known as the Krill to drain all of the planet's emotion in order to survive. Batman uses a telepathic device to communicate with them, finds out that there's another meteor on the way. Superman wants to destroy it. Batman convinces him that he can't. Superman totally gets that and instead brings it to the Fortress of Solitude. The second ship opens. More slug aliens get out, and upon seeing their brethren from the first ship, they immediately start groping, undulating, and physically linking with one another, while Batman and Superman stand back and watch. Once they're done, one of the slugs confides in Batman as he grows a hairy appendage for no apparent reason. Apparently, in the midst of their copious tentacle lovemaking, the slugs have decided, rather than destroy the Earth, they're going to let themselves die instead. Oddly, both Batman and Superman object to this, but alas, it's too late, as the aliens shrivel up and die, though not before thanking Superman for letting them get it on in his fortress. So swelled up with emotion over the whole scene are the two superheroes that they start crying and hug over the ashes of the dead alien race. And with that, our work here is done, unquote.
Oh my God.
I share the panels, but you don't deserve that.
No, thank you.
Last up is one of our favorite things from outofcontextdnd.tumblr.com. D&D quotes, out of context, and made all the funnier for it.
After that last one, I kind of need this.
10 or 20?
20.
20. Need a full 20 for alien tentacle sex, huh?
God. You know what? I joke about live-action tentacle porn and crap like that, but... Dude!
There it is.
Oh.
The first quote from Out of Context D&D was apparently a character that was a one-legged German mad scientist who teleported to America. Quote, normally, a trip to America would cost you an arm and a leg. I got a discount.
Wow. Someone really wanted to say that.
Yeah.
From a Pathfinder game. That guy's still alive. He just has a stab wound in his gut and disappointment in his heart.
Okay.
I'm going to guess that there was a vampire or werewolf game attributed to this next quote. Guess it's time to breastfeed Jake Gyllenhaal in the bathroom of this vampire fried chicken.
Someone tried really hard for that one.
Yeah. How about this? Two players talking to each other. It's the nickels and dimes that kill you. No, it's the bullets. Keep the Jeep.
Yeah, gotta agree.
This next quote, I don't want the context just because the quote is enough. Does a whale count as a siege weapon?
That's pretty good.
The next one sounds like geek shame. We're in a dungeon. Now is not the time to be self-conscious about your weight.
I'm assuming he means carry weight, but yeah.
The only person you can trust is the leprechaun from Minnesota.
I call bullshit.
But you know, he's a Packers fan.
Cheesehead.
which is dangerous in Minnesota. Usually they're Vikings fans. Two characters talking to each other in the next quote, a druid and an elven noble. We're starting with the druid. I can turn into a giant octopus, so untie the bard. But I want to fish with a bard.
Wow.
Next quote. Consider my scream a cock-a-doodle-doo.
Okay.
Scary. Oh, God, the next one is from a battle cleric. Maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's were-ratleen.
Oh, God.
The next one, I'm not sure if it was somebody asking a question of a D&D or two characters talking. What is a Warforged bard, if not a jukebox?
I have to give the person props for going with something else outlandish as a Warforged as a bard, considering their charisma penalty. But yeah. That's... Wow.
How about this? The next quote is a rogue and a paladin talking to each other. You need to teach your son to write in common. He can write in abyssal. Some of us can't read abyssal. That sounds like a you problem.
Ass. Oh. And a new outlet for paladin dickishness has been found.
Next quote is from a cleric. It's a Christmassy bat, that's for sure.
What?
It's a Christmassy bat, that's for sure.
Wow.
Okay.
The next one is a three characters talking to each other. The first character is a cleric. That's all I need to explain to you. Guess I'm a warlock now. A cleric lock. A super who lock.
Okay.
Super who locks are names for fans of Doctor Who and Sherlock Holmes.
Gotcha.
Next quote is a cleric to a paladin. Ah, son of a gun, you erase yourself from existence.
Okay.
What, he
I hope that
Rod of Wonder?
I don't know, maybe he had sex with his grandmother.
Oof.
The next one, I don't know. It just says, my phylactery is a ball of catnip. The next quote is somebody trying to be a dick. I paint the rock egg camo.
Is that rock R-O-C?
Yes.
Okay.
There was a werewolf rogue in a party, and the dungeon master told him, quote, are you just yelling bark over and over at him, or are you actually barking, unquote. There's two more left. One is a dragonborn wizard trying to use a high-level summoning spell and rolls a 1.
Oh.
Ooh.
The DM tells him, well, let's see what happens. Congratulations, you successfully summoned something, but it's an ethereal squid from the realm of magic. And the bard looks at it and says, can I eat it? And the last quote has no context whatsoever to it, but it's true of so many things. If you can go through a keyhole, you can go through an asshole.
Oh, wow.
Damn.
I'll let that sink in. The subject of this week is The subject of this week is Doctor Strange, Volume 1 from 2015, also known as The Way of the Weird. It was done by writer Jason Aaron. Penciler was Chris Bachalo. The inkers were Tim Townsend, Al Vey, Mark Irvin, Tom Livesay, Wayne Foucher, Victor Olazaba, and Jamie Mendoza. Jesus Christ, inkers were all over this thing. The artist and colorist Kevin Nolan was for The Coming Slaughter. Letterer was VC's Corey Pettit. This was a very different story of Doctor Strange. Usually Doctor Strange tends to be very stoic, and if he had a curse, I'd say, through comics, it was that his powers are very deus ex machina. Always had the perfect spell at the perfect time to undo whatever his issues have been. The writer here definitely did his best to kind of take Doctor Strange down a notch in his invincibility.
Yeah.
Yep.
The story primarily has to do with some kind of force destroying magic and killing Sorcerer Supremes from varying dimensions on their way to Earth. That's the short version. I will start off by saying, after reading the 5 issues that made up this volume, I was very intrigued. That would be the right word for it.
Yeah, I have to say,
I was angry
the cliffhanger at the end was like...
Yeah. I was angry because I need to finish this damn story.
Damn
you, Jeremy.
Why damn me? The story was volume 1. That's how they got here. The Death of Magic arc is a completely separate arc that would have taken another 5 to 6 issues, from what I understand, to read, and that sounded like a lot. This story did not wrap up shortly. Aaron took his time telling this story. And while it doesn't work in most comic books to tell stories that are over 8 issues long unless they're mega events, in this case, he took his time and I applaud him for it. He crafted something very frightening here.
There was I'm not really super familiar with Doctor Strange, but it seemed like they were revealing a lot of his personal life and just some secrets and whatnot.
My understanding is that Doctor Strange, like I said, has been very stoic in comic books. He has had girlfriends, but they've been his relationships have been more or less monogamous, and his lifestyle, with the exception of the magic, seems fairly normal by most standards. In this case, they kicked it up a notch and really created this scenario where Doctor Strange is the only possible respondent. The way that they presented him with having the ability to see the world as we perceive it, as well as see the world that only he can see,
right,
was a very nice storytelling device. The idea that babbling idiot on a park bench who looks homeless might be saving your life from some unknown interdimensional being was a very nice choice of story. Was a very nice visual picture.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even the very first enemy he was fighting, he appeared to be very busy, running all over the place, trying to stop these interdimensional things and kissing a woman who looks like she's one end of a large worm or tentacle. And then you come to the realization that he's just floating in a boy's bedroom while he's trying to exorcise these things clamped down on his soul. And then the parents are standing there just asking, is he making kissing sounds?
Oh, man.
I really like that storytelling aspect, that he's constantly straddling 2 different worlds at the same time. In most movies, TV shows, even other comic books, you're either in one place or the other, and he's always at least in 2 places, and it's very intriguing. They also added the aspect that he's constantly changing his clothes so that he can walk around normally. His cape turning into a scarf, and he's wearing that dark leather jacket as soon as he leaves his latest assignment was a very nice device. I also like that they added the idea that when you see the world through his eyes, everything goes black and white except for the magical and other dimensional stuff, and then that third eye pops up on his forehead.
Right.
They did a great job here. Chris Bachalo, his art is not always to my liking, though. Sometimes when things get fast, it's like when Strange is jumping or swinging something, I notice that body parts get kind of distended in his work.
Really? I actually rather enjoy this art.
The handling in this was very confusing to me. I had a hard time following one panel to the next. But
his panel layout was definitely non-linear. It bounced around quite a bit.
Yeah. At one point, I was like, am I supposed to read this, right to left like a Japanese comic or something? This is not making sense to me.
In a couple of pages you did. It's like the first issue, page 16. You did start at the middle, then you move to the right, then you move left, then you move far left, and then you move back to the right.
Yeah, it was just... That was jarring. But it kind of worked for the story.
The concept of the bar with no doors, that's almost the kind of place you want in a Disneyland-esque type of, theme park. Not as a functioning, event or ride, but I mean as a place to, go and grab a meal. That would be entertaining.
I have to say that, considering that, this upcoming movie is going to be kind of his origins, I'm really glad we're not going to have to see him eat.
We'll get to that further on. What did you think of his meeting in the bar with no doors between himself, Shaman, Brother Voodoo, and the Scarlet Witch?
I thought it was actually kind of amusing.
Yes.
These mystical and magical, people and super powerhouses and whatnot, and they're just like,
sitting talking over tea.
Well, alcohol in this case, but yeah.
It's also very interesting because as much as these are probably four of the most notable magicians in the Marvel Universe, they all have very different styles, and they all have extremely different viewpoints on how to deal with things.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you got Brother Voodoo, like Creole voodooism. You've got Shaman there, who's more of a naturalist, the Scarlet Witch, the Chaos Magician, and the Sorcerer Supreme, the guy who was taught all magics. Not one of them would approach a problem the same way, and they had a very interesting point of view argument that was all kind of turned on its side when Monaco, the Prince of Magic, walked over. Number one, I don't know much of his history. Number two, great play on the name considering he's missing an eye. Monaco. That was a nice choice. And the speech on that page, issue 1, page 18, when Monaco's talking about the price of magic, you knew that was going to come back somehow, but you weren't sure how. God, did that play out towards the end of this volume?
It was, yeah.
It was horrific. That's the word I'd attach to it.
Yeah.
And then late in this issue is when we meet Zelma, a librarian who went to Doctor Strange's house for help, and she's just standing outside muttering.
Mm-hmm.
I loved how he kind of took the passerby approach at first.
Oh, yeah, he pretended he wasn't even there. I still like that he goes through the entire speech about the strangeness of the house, then he just walks inside, tells her to follow, and then he says, "Are you coming in or aren't you, Miss Stanton? How do you know my name?" Really? That's the question you choose to ask first.
I just loved when he opened the door. How's this pretentious for you? Is this pretentious enough for you?
Yeah. And she went to him because she had what she thought was a rash until it grew eyes and teeth.
And tried to eat her hairbrush.
Yeah. It bit her hairbrush. She went to the emergency room and they screamed at her. And threw bedpans, according to her.
Yeah.
They threw bedpans. And I like the last part of that quote. My friend Jeannie heard that you once helped a man in Queens who woke up with a dog growing out of his chest.
Yeah.
I'm afraid that
man died.
And the end of the issue, when he's trying to exorcise whatever that is growing out of her head, and a bunch of nightmarish imps just come pouring out of the wound. I gotta say, for a first issue, they really knew how to get your attention.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I could not live his life.
Yeah. The add-on for the graphic novel, The Coming Slaughter, that was a scary bit of an interlude. That wasn't in the original comics. That was added specifically for the graphic novel.
Ah.
So it added a little bit of background as to what might be driving these imps to come into a place they don't usually come. In the form of the Empirical, some kind of technological force that can destroy magic as an entity. And wants to destroy all of them, like Spanish Inquisition style.
Yeah.
That's the literal thing they're doing. They're burning sorcerers at the stake.
And wiping out magic, yeah.
When they had that one Sorcerer Supreme from the alternate dimension, and they told him they're going to retrieve the holy acid?
Yeah.
That was frightening.
Dude, that made my blood curdle, and I'm just sitting there reading comic books. The second issue starts with these imps still pouring out of his head. Doctor Strange goes to one of the tried and true, the Crimson Bands of Sidorak, and nothing happens.
Yeah, no. When he first cast that spell, it's like, oh crap, things about to get serious.
Yeah, I mean, when you cast the Crimson Bands, you want something not to move for a while. That's obvious. When it doesn't work, that's even worse. And he cast that like every other damn story. So he has to go through his house trying to find these imps before they open the wrong door, which could cause an apocalypse on Earth. I've never really seen a whole lot of Doctor Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum outside of video games. The version that Bachalo and Aaron put together, it's almost like an organic version of the TARDIS.
It disturbs me greatly, especially when he's passing by those spiritual nuns and they're just talking to him about his different medical conditions.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
Thank you, Mom.
I will say, though, that if you want to really if you're really interested in making this into part of like a Disney park since they own Marvel, if you could come up with a skin for the Haunted Mansion that's a Sanctum Sanctorum, holy frick, do you have a lot of material in this comic.
Don't talk to the snakes.
Oh, yeah, don't talk to the snakes. What about
all of that?
What about the bathhouse? When they're walking through there, Strange just says, 3 of the creatures appear to have drowned in the bathhouse, so we know they can die. Few mortal beings can withstand these waters. And then there's Zelma. You have a bathhouse? Of course you have a bathhouse. Look at your mustache.
Gotta talk about the porn stash.
Yeah. Like Steve said, the spectral nun's rattling off his medical conditions, and he doesn't even want to discuss it. The staircase scene, which almost seems Harry Potter-esque, except it even goes MC Escher style upside down and sideways.
Yeah.
This is not possible. Nothing about this is even remotely possible. Best not to dwell on it, or you could drive yourself mad. Best not to look up either. Or down. Or into the shadows.
Basically, don't stare at anything if you don't want your eyes to melt out of your head.
Yeah. And just like that, and she comes across a room and screams it's the most horrifying thing she's ever seen, and it's a stack of books. Do you really put all of your books in piles like that? God, you're a monster!
She's definitely a librarian.
You know what? She's probably seen enough Doctor Who, this crap doesn't bother. The second issue was an intriguing bit of world building, really. They really set up the house as this whole different... I would say multiple planes of existence all at once. There's all kinds of things that are possible in there, and unlike the TARDIS, just about every door in this place has something behind it that can kill you if you don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
And then Zelma is by herself and comes across several of these imps trying to open the refrigerator, which sounds horrifying.
Yeah, especially because he had already, at this point, warned her about this.
Yeah. And then she runs away from what's in the fridge, and someone starts beating the crap out of imps with frying pans, reaches into the fridge with the frying pan, and takes out something that can best be described as a tentacle with eyes with spider legs and a couple extra tentacles, and proceeds to cook it alive.
And of course, this fricassee.
Yeah. This, of course, is Doctor Strange's longtime manservant and martial arts trainer, Wong. I'm doing my best... Yes.
I will say, throughout this story, the amount of times that he pulls out a sword, a mace, an axe, or, so on and so on, I was like, okay, I understand why he had the martial arts training. Because he's not just casting spells, he's beating shit to death.
I know. You'd think he'd have, like, Dragon Slayer's cloak, that cloak where you reach into it and pull out any weapon. He's basically doing that all over the place. I'm not going to go into how they got rid of it because it's a little bit long. The best way to put it would be Doctor Strange finally convinced the creatures to come to one point so he could absorb them into his own body and get rid of them with his own magical bacteria, as he puts it. Yeah. Like his antibodies are better. And he convinces Zelma to come back every Saturday to rearrange his library so everything is at least in order. Dear God, is she that bored?
Apparently.
Because I would think having napalm hurled at you by an angry Dormammu would be safer than going to rearrange that man's library. And then the last couple pages where another Sorcerer Supreme is trying to crawl out of a door when the Empirical drag him back through it.
Yeah, the same one that they had in that one that they added only for the production.
Yeah. I mean, as much fun as you have reading Doctor Strange's misadventures, you really have this undercurrent of fear because something, even without really seeing it, there's an undercurrent that something really fearsome is on its way. The third issue, I love how it starts with dogs barking at nothing. It turns out they're barking at a naked astral Stephen Strange running away from spiritual slugs.
And rainbows.
I can't hear slugs anymore without... Damn it.
Tentacle sex?
Yes.
Okay. Just imagine Batman and Superman crying.
No. No.
We got a trigger word for him.
It's going to be hard to let go of. The third issue, pretty much, the crux of it is Doctor Strange waking up in a strange place in his astral form, being attacked by things that actually eat mystical and astral energy. Which is dangerous when you're stuck in an astral form. This is one of those times where Bachala's art did a pretty good job. When Strange is running away, you can see like open chunks being eaten out of his form. It's terrifying. It's also terrifying that he's naked with no defenses and no spell energy to throw at anything other than that weird shockwave bomb he did that made just about everybody in Central Park vomit.
Yeah.
The image of Strange reaching into his own gut, ripping out his heart, and then casting a minor incantation on it to make it explode with energy. There are so many Freudian things going on there, I can't even start. Gets back to his house. Wong is fighting these things in the physical world while he gets back in his body. And then he casts some kind of spell that just expels them. It feeds them all to the point of a food coma. Again, very Freudian.
Yeah.
So these slugs supposedly came from a door in Doctor Strange's house that leads to a place called Fandazar Fu that has so much magical energy. It's grown on trees, it's in the water, it's in the sky, it's everywhere. So when they walk into
treated by the wildlife.
Yeah, and when they walk into Fandar Fu to find out why these things have wandered to Earth, they find out Fandar Fu has been reduced to a wasteland.
It looks like a battlefield from Game of Thrones.
It looks like Detroit. But, I mean, obviously the Empirical were just there, except Doctor Strange doesn't know what they are or what's happening to any of this. Then the Empirical, putting one Sorcerer Supreme through an Iron Maiden, of all things. Several others' cage. And then their leader casually killing some kind of sky whale. Saying, praise the Empirical and death to magic, as if it's all just very nonchalant.
Yeah.
For an enemy that appears so little in these comics, they are a very frightening force. You know, unlike the other stuff that we've read kind of casually, or on a test-by-test basis, this is the first enemy that really just is scary, even though you barely know what they do. Probably just because their intent is one of those things where they're not trying to be malevolent, but they're very good at being malevolent.
Yeah, I mean, their end goal could actually be a good thing. You don't know. I mean, how trustworthy, how sane, is magic. But at the same time, their methods and means.
Yeah, my concern about that kind of thing, though, is what people consider magic is kind of subjective. You know, to certain people's science is an incredible magic. So by destroying magic, what are you actually destroying? What are you destroying their connections to? If you get rid of magic, does that mean like cosmic beings like Eternity and the Phoenix are affected?
Yeah. Well, not to mention the fact that, magic exists. It's obviously there for a reason.
Yeah.
Just, arbitrarily saying, oh, no, we don't want this.
Yeah, the fourth issue opens with Doctor Strange having a meeting with just about every major mystic in the Marvel Universe, including the X-Men's Magic and Damien Hellstrom, son of Satan, to have a discussion about what he's seen and magic dying across several dimensions. Or actually dead. Magic dead across several dimensions.
Yeah, not to mention, just how he starts off the conversation.
Yeah. It sounds dire. It's one of those things, even in the text, it sounds bleak.
Yeah.
Like they have barely any hope to begin with, and now they have to deal with it.
Burying more Sorcerer Supremes than he even knew existed, and they were all tortured before being killed. It's like, who has the ability to do that?
Yeah, and then there's the Book of Watum back in his library that fell over dead because the magical energy in it is gone. So in other words, obviously the Empirical are already operating on Earth somewhere.
Yeah.
And then there's the next scene of him trying to eat something that looks like purple pus with teeth and eyes in it.
And his quote was, tastes like leprosy.
I will say that in reading this comic, I didn't stop reading it because being grossed out, but I wasn't very hungry by the time I was done.
Yeah.
Apparently he needs to eat this stuff because it helps replenish his magical energies, and regular food just doesn't taste right to him anymore.
No, it literally turns to ash in his mouth.
And that's rather sad.
Yeah, he mentioned it's sad to live in New York and he can't eat a
food.
pizza.
He has to eat this stuff, and it's all about that, you know, as it goes on in the story and several times, you know, every punch has its price. You know,
that was the
throwing
most
magic
interesting.
around has warped him and changed him in ways that he cannot be normal anymore.
Well, it's changed him in more ways than even he's aware of, because in the middle of issue 4, Wong goes through one of the doors into Siberia for reasons that Doctor Strange is completely unaware of, while Strange goes to the Temple of Watum, the area of, or the origin place of the book that died, to find out what's going on, and he encounters some kind of techno-probe from the Empirical.
Yeah.
And then he gets a call, or Zelma tries to call him on his phone to tell him that multiple books in his library are dying all at once.
All of them, as she says.
You know, it was one of those things where it just gets more dire as things go by. And then issue 5, it's not like things get any better. Every section that has magic is under attack. But we start off with a flashback to the time Doctor Strange tried Atlantean black magic and ended up with his eyes bleeding.
Yes. Well, his eyes gone. They were just cavities.
He had to go to the cellar for something, but Wong wouldn't take him there. It turns out that's because Wong had trained a group of mystics to share the damage Doctor Strange does to himself when he's casting spells. As Steve said, earlier in this story, we found out every punch has a cost, as the Ancient One put it to him. When you cast a spell, it creates a terrible cost on you. So, instead of allowing Doctor Strange to die early, Wong has allowed an unknown number of mystics to spread out the damage amongst themselves, and even they are having serious trouble keeping up at this point, by the dozen. It's noble of Wong and these people, but it's still scary on a lot of respects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that means we have no idea how many people have died on Doctor Strange's behalf, because Strange thinks he can take everything he's doing.
And if Wong hadn't done this, you know, I'm honestly kind of curious as to whether or not the ultimate solution to this is whatever the hell's down in the cellar.
I don't know. That we never found that out over the course of the story, but as Wong is assessing the life and damage of these mystics, is when the Empirical even attacked them in Siberia by these probes and wolves, and then they're simultaneously going after several places. Wundagore Mountain, home of the High Evolutionary, and the place where the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were turned into what they are. Weird World, too complicated to get into. The Florida Everglades, the home of the Man-Thing. Machu Picchu, don't quite know the prevalence there, except one of the mystics in Strange's latest meeting was there. The skies above New York, where Dr. Voodoo is doing his best to hold them off. And even the bar with no doors gets attacked.
Yep.
You know, Doctor Strange is trying to fight back while he's still in the Temple of Watum, and his magical items are losing their magic very rapidly. And he's left with the Atlantean black magic spell again, which causes another one of the monks to lose their eyes.
Yep.
And he manages to stop all of the probes there, but he doesn't stop the gigantic one, bigger than most skyscrapers, still coming to New York, and at least one other that we can see in the foreground. Because it looks like the main force of the Empirical have arrived on Earth, and they're on their way.
Yeah, led by the unnamed leader of the Empirical people.
Yeah, but that last page before the volume died, when Doctor Strange is staring at the Eye of Agamotto as it loses its magic.
Yeah.
Holy crap, man. Because I read this story, and I know I want to read the next arc. I can't say necessarily that I want to read more of Doctor Strange. It's not something I can refer to a lot of people, because, dude, you have to have a lot of patience to get through this, to get to the end of this volume.
Really?
However, I think
it was
so.
Thoroughly entertaining.
It explains itself well, but think about it. When people are asking a good comic book to read, most of them are not talking about sorcerer books, magic books. Let alone, some of the references in here do require a little bit more than average knowledge of Marvel, because the first meeting he had in the bar with no doors, I knew everybody except Monaco. But I don't know a lot of people who know who Shaman from Alpha Flight is, or the fact that Chandu the Mystic used to be a villain, a C-list villain. So it's one of those things that, as much as I enjoyed it, it's not one of those things I can hand out to a lot of people, because you have to understand some stuff about Marvel, and let alone you have to get used to the idea that half of the things Doctor Strange does don't really involve a whole lot of direct conflict. This is one of the rare cases where he had to, because the writers put him to a point where his magic was unreliable.
Right.
So that's the other reason why it's hard to refer this, because where this book starts is not very likely to be where it ends.
And, you may get invested in this and be like, oh, man, I really like this, and then you go read the other stuff, and you're like, wait, this is nothing like...
Yeah, and then as soon as this story is done and the Empirical are gone, we're back to the Crimson Bands of Sidorak and the Wand of Watum. So it's a great story. Don't misunderstand me, Jesse, but it's not one I can hand off to a lot of people.
I actually understand what you're saying, because when he cast that spell, the Crimson Bands of Sidorak, I said, he's pulling out the gauntlets from the Juggernaut? Like,
that's what it sounds like, except most of Sidorak's spells that he does involves restricting movement. And the Crimson Bands of Sidorak are what's around the Juggernaut's arms. Unbreakable. That's the idea. You're bringing in the Crimson Bands of Sidorak, whatever it is not going to be able to get through them, unless it knows a dispel. So, I enjoyed this. I thoroughly want to read the next volume, but yeah, it's one of those things where, as I was done reading, I'm like, this is great, and it probably would be great for somebody who really wants to read the book. Not somebody who's just saying, would I like it?
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the fact that I was determined to read Doctor Strange, I don't know if I would have gotten through these 5 books themselves with the patience to find out what the Empirical is. You know what I mean? You guys give opinions. That's just where I sit.
No, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't... Doctor Strange has never been my cup of tea. I wouldn't have even recommended, reading this or anything except for the fact that the movie's coming out. It does kind of raise the question, how, anybody that does watch the movie is intrigued by the movie and everything else, how well are they going to adapt to the comic book version?
Well, considering how they reacted when Steve Rogers said, "Hail Hydra," not very well.
Yeah.
All I say is, for me, it's like I did have a low opinion of Doctor Strange because in various iterations I've seen in on TV, he was always way too serious and too uptight. But this one kind of humanized him for me a bit.
I could definitely see this Doctor Strange doing the Mustache Bros thing.
Yes. But when I say humanized, it's like he's spending his life protecting a world he cannot enjoy, only because of the weird stuff he sees, which has almost become commonplace for him. He can't enjoy food. I mean, our food.
Yeah.
And then there's the idea that his hands are so messed up that he can't do even the most mundane things with them.
Yeah, imagine what it's like to swing those swords with those hands. I will say this, though. If the Doctor Strange movie that's coming out in November does well, Aaron and Bachalo here may have the perfect kind of guideline to create a sequel to that film. Because there's a bunch of notable moments in here, and despite me not thinking it's a very referable read, it's a very quick read.
Yeah.
The pacing was really nice. It never really left you sitting there going too much exposition, too much dialogue. They had the right kind of dialogue added into the right visuals to keep everything just pushing along, and it was really good pacing.
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak for you guys, but I really kind of need to seek out the second volume and find out how this story is resolved.
Yeah, yes. No, they left it on such a cliffhanger. It was like, oh... I was honestly going, wait, what? Did I only get, half of this thing? there's more to this. I can tell there's more to this. Why did it stop here?
Yeah, well, this was, like I said, Volume 1, when you check out the trades, is called Way of the Weird. Volume 2 is called The Last Days of Magic. Which implies that things don't get better very fast.
No.
So, yeah, as much as I would like to read it, not a very referable one, but still, if you know somebody that's into more occultish comics, this is a good place to go.
Yeah.
If they just say, give me a comic, you're probably better off going for like Avengers or Justice League or something a little more standard to ease them in. Throwing them in here is, not only are you throwing them into the deep end of the pool when it comes to magical comics, you're shoving their head under the water and saying, breathe, bitch, breathe.
Yeah.
I think I might have an idea what it's like to be on a trip reading this.
It's about as good as that guy that introduced his significant other to anime by having them watch Ninja Scroll.
Yo. So, yeah, thumbs up, just not a wide release type of thing. If somebody's deep into comics, good story that's outside the norm. If somebody's into magic or occult comics, great story right up their alley. If they're looking for superhero comics, dude, you messed them up. Next week, the plan is already set in stone. We're going to read the first 5 issues of Power Man and Iron Fist from the post-Secret Wars days. We're going to find out what the modern versions of Luke Cage and Iron Man look like, and pretty soon we're going to have a chance to see how close the Luke Cage TV show is to this, let alone next year we'll find out how close the Iron Fist TV show is to this portrayal.
Yep.
So, feels like a good place to go from here. I am considering the weekend after that taking a weekend off. I know you guys every once in a while get a break when I go to a convention, but it's occurred to me recently, I don't get a break.
Yeah.
So I might take a weekend off just for my own edification, but we'll figure that out when we reconvene next week. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much for tuning in. Invite you to roll with us again next week when it's Power Man and Iron Fist 1 through 5. Thank you very much. Have a great one. I am Jeremy.
Steve.
And Jesse.
Don't jerk and drive. Take care. Seriously, man, that thing with the teeth in the bowl, I could almost taste it and I needed to vomit.
Oh, God. The thing in her head and just all the imps flying out and just...
Imagine how bad that is for me when I'm bald, man. There's no hiding that under a comb over.